Chapter 235, Senior Envoys. In the pitch-dark night, a large flying magical beast suddenly descended upon the city lord's mansion. Thanks to the bright illuminations by the building, the shape of the flying magical beast could be roughly determined. It looked like an eagle with pitch-black feathers and its wings spanning out to around 20 meters. On its back, two figures suddenly dropped down onto ground below with their clothes billowing in the wind. In the courtyard, Yunli stood by with a group of soldiers standing behind him nervously. Yet there was also an expectant look on each one of their faces. As the flying magical beast descended, Yunli continued to wait, but the moment it drew close, Yunli called out to the two figures, "This one is honored to greet the envoys." Dong 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 dong. In the early morning of the Kai clan's courtyards, the large knocking sounds of the doors suddenly broke the early silence. Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes as he looked toward the door. "Kai heir, come in." With that, the doors began to creak open as the expensively robed leader of the Kai clan came walking in. Welcoming the ever-so-calm Jian Chen, he greeted, "Captain, Lord Yunli came by just recently and mentioned that he wanted to see you. He's currently waiting in the main halls." Muttering to himself, Jian Chen said, "Just what does he want me now for?" "That I do not know, but judging by his expression, it must be something serious." Kai heir replied. "Well then, let us greet him." Jian Chen threw the two Class 3 monster cores in his hand and followed Kai heir out of the room. Following Kai heir, they reached the halls of Kai clan only to see the armored Yunli standing with a middle-aged man next to him. Then, right by the middle-aged man, a young woman with an appearance revealing her to be around 20 years old stood by his side. In the last 2 days, Jian Chen had made sure to pay attention to each important member of the Kai clan. This middle-aged man was Kai heir's son, Kai Lak. He was 40 years old this year, and the 20-year-old woman by his side was Kai heir's granddaughter, Kai Di. Jian Chen recognized the person Kai Lak was talking to was Commander Duoli, who was smiling at him. "Captain! Captain!" Seeing Jian Chen, Kai heir's daughter Kai Di immediately rose from her chair to call out to Jian Chen. After the flame mercenaries had entered the Kai clan's courtyards, Kai heir had insisted that his son and granddaughter call Jian Chen captain as well. Although both Kai Lak and Kai Di had first objected to it, after some words between them and Kai heir, they had finally relented to the matter. Jian Chen nodded his head at the two as a way of greeting before turning to Commander Duoli. "Commander Duoli, what matter might you have for me so early in the morning?" Duoli turned to Jian Chen with a small smile. "Brother Jian Chen, senior envoys wish to see you. If you could, would you please come with to the Lord's mansion?" "Senior envoys?" Jian Chen's eyes narrowed as he tried to figure out who exactly this senior envoys was. Seeing Jian Chen's confusion, Duoli explained to him, "Senior envoys is an expert from Monarch City we hired to help defend Wake City during the wave." From the word expert, Commander Duoli bit his lips as he stared at Jian Chen with a look of reverence. Hearing that, Jian Chen's eyes flashed with hesitation as he spoke. "Commander Duoli, do you know for what reason this senior envoys wishes to see me?" "This I am not sure. Senior envoys didn't explain and I didn't dare ask." Duoli shook his head. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed once more as he tried to think of many different reasons, but in the end, he could only follow Commander Duoli back to the mansion. At the Lord's mansion, Commander Duoli stopped right in front of the garden before turning around to talk to Jian Chen. "Brother Jian Chen, senior envoys is awaiting for you within a pavilion further ahead. I still have some matters to attend to, so I cannot accompany you." Nodding his head in understanding, Jian Chen looked ahead to where the garden was. Surrounding the entire place was a multitude of different types of flowers with a sweet fragrance wafting through the air. With one breath of this fragrance, one would feel that their qi would stabilize since the amount of spiritual essence here was saturated. Jian Chen finally stopped to look at the pavilion in the center of the garden where two expensively robed figures sat underneath drinking wine. Yunli stood by their sides and respectfully poured some wine for them every so often with no guards in sight. Jian Chen stared at the two rich-clothed men for a moment. His mind had realized that these two were the ones that Duo Li had referred to as senior envoys, so without hesitation, he began to walk toward the pavilion slowly. On the way, his eyes continued to shift around from spot to spot in the garden. The moment Jian Chen had reached the pavilion, Lord Yunli hurriedly spoke out to the two envoys, senior envoys, "This brother here is called Jian Chen." The two envoys looked at Jian Chen at the same time as Jian Chen looked at them. He could see that these two were around 40 years old and one had a gentle disposition that would make anyone have a good feeling about them at first glance. The other's expression was the complete opposite of the other man and he had a cold expression on his face. Despite that, the two had the same type of clothing and accessories. Even more astonishing was that the two's faces were identical. "So you're Jian Chen?" The gentle-looking figure smiled as he greeted Jian Chen. Jian Chen cupped his hands together in greeting, "Correct, I am Jian Chen. Might this one ask what fellow brothers here want?" Jian Chen's voice was neither disrespectful or respectful, and his posture was not improper in etiquette. After Jian Chen finished speaking, a large amount of qi filled the air and began to press down onto Jian Chen with a terrifying amount of pressure. Underneath, Jian Chen immediately felt that it was as if he were being weighed down by a heavy stone and found it suddenly hard to breathe. At this sudden development, Jian Chen's face was startled and his originally calm face gained a serious expression. There was a level of coldness as he stared at the gentle-looking man who was still beaming at him. Not to be outdone, Jian Chen began to fill the air with his own qi which immediately made contact with the one pressing against him. Pa! Following a loud bang, the previously quiet garden was suddenly engulfed in a fierce wind as the flower petals began to dance and fly into the air. Senior envoys. Yun Li's face had changed as he cried out to them in a panic. The kind-looking envoy waved his hand at Yun Li as he continued to smile at Jian Chen without speaking another word. Chapter 236, The Soaring Sword Qi. Jian Chen's qi had interweaved with the envoy's qi in midair in a way reminiscent of two dangerous beasts tearing away at each other without relenting. In contrast to where Jian Chen and the envoy were, the garden around them was assaulted by a strong gale which only grew in size with each passing moment. The kindly envoy nodded his head with yet another smile before increasing his output even more. In a moment's notice, the perilous situation Jian Chen was in had suddenly intensified. Jian Chen's face immediately hardened as he felt the qi increase in pressure. It was only just recently that Jian Chen was fighting at an even level with the man, but straight away, Jian Chen felt as if the entire area around him had frozen and he was trapped within. Unable to break free of the restrictions, even his clothes had been tightly pressed against him due to the envoy's qi. Jian Chen's throat released a small growl as he quickly increased his own qi. Quickly, it began to reach a peak, but the amount of qi the other man was still controlling Jian Chen and so he was unable to break free. Despite all of his best efforts, the amount of strength being imposed onto Jian Chen was similar to being tasked with climbing an unclimbable mountain. These two envoys were of the Earth Saint Master class while Jian Chen was only at the primary Great Saint Master level, therefore it was impossible for him to try and compete with either of the two. Although Jian Chen wasn't able to move even a fraction underneath the overwhelming qi, he was still unyielding to the man. His inner saint force continued to circulate as it tried to counteract the foreign qi surrounding him. Underneath Jian Chen's legs, the ground began to split away into several cracks. From the center of his feet, a series of spiderweb-like cracks began to develop in every direction. After the stone had broke, Jian Chen was slowly starting to sink into the ground. Seeing how the envoy from Monarch City was treating Jian Chen, Yunli couldn't help but have an anxious look on his face from the side. In his heart, he had already been convinced that Jian Chen was the young son of an influential clan somewhere with a potential that could only be seen once every 100 years. If a youngster like him was able to reach the Great Saint Master level, then it was hard to tell exactly where his real limit was, or what heights he could reach. If this envoy were to offend Jian Chen, then he wasn't sure exactly what problem would later occur. Most importantly, if Jian Chen were to harbor a grudge after this, then a headache of a problem would definitely occur and trouble would happen. Despite the worry on Yunli's face, the two envoys in front of him were not people he could afford to offend. So, after a single attempt at placating the two, he didn't say anything more, and in fear of angering them, he stood by the sidelines once more. The envoy was trying to test Jian Chen's strength, and so they continued to increase the pressure onto Jian Chen. At this moment, both of Jian Chen's legs were breaking through the dirt, making him sink into the ground. Jian Chen's face was incomparably white, as if a heavy stone was still pressing down onto his body. Just breathing was a difficult task for him, but he continued to grit his teeth and persevere, and his eyes grew colder by the second as killing intent grew with it. Clearly, the actions of this envoy had invoked Jian Chen's killing intent. The envoy was still smiling at Jian Chen with a gentle look, almost as if he were a kindly old man looking after his domesticated livestock. However, by this point, the ever-increasing amount of qi pressing down on Jian Chen was so much he wasn't able to move even a fingernail. This must be the true extent of an Earth Saint Master's strength. With just his qi, I've been unable to move. How terrifying. I can't even compare to him as a great Saint Master. Jian Chen thought to himself in shock. The difference between an Earth Saint Master and a great Saint Master was like the difference between heaven to earth. There was just a huge line that separated between them. Just as Jian Chen was barely able to control his breathing, suddenly the azure and violet glows of light within his dantian suddenly emerged from his body in the form of two glows of light around his head. They looked to be the two handles of a sword that were currently stabbing into his head. At the same time, an unbelievably strong amount of sword qi flew outward, almost as if it were appearing out of nowhere. In a split second, the entire garden was filled with sword qi, and every unit of air was condensed with it. The feeling was quite sharp, unlike the gentle caress of a simple stream of wind. In fact, the feeling was similar to being sliced by multiple swords with a stinging sensation. The moment the sword qi flew out from Jian Chen's body, the flowers all around the garden began to dance wildly, as the next moment, a storm of dust covered the entire area. With a second look, not a single stalk of grass or flower was left remaining. Abruptly, the stone pavilion echoed with a rustling sound, as the entire storm of dust covered the sky in every direction. A short moment later, the outside of the pavilion couldn't even be seen anymore thanks to the dust which completely covered everyone's line of sight. What type of power is this? Hurry up and get back. The two envoys no longer had their calm expression on their faces and immediately flew backward to escape from the perimeter of the sword qi. Even Yun Li's reaction wasn't too slow, and he immediately leaped backward as well. His entire face was filled with anxiety before shock quickly overtook it. Just as the two envoys retreated, the two azure and violet-colored swords suddenly disappeared from sight back into his body in a single instance. Following their disappearance, the shroud of sword qi receded as well, leaving behind the remnants of the flower garden with scars everywhere. The two envoys and Yunli stood 100 meters away in shock as they looked at Jian Chen with disbelief. However, in comparison to earlier, Jian Chen was in a sorrier state than before, as the ground beneath his feet were filled with cracks. From the three men's faces, a decent amount of tiny wounds with blood barely leaking out could be seen. Though, they weren't fast enough to retreat before some of their hair had been cut into pieces and floated away into the wind. Even their clothes had been ripped and began to stain with blood. Just what type of power is this? How could it be this terrifying? The gentle-looking envoy cried out with shock, and a healthy amount of fear reflected on his face. In that split second, both envoys had used their saint force to protect themselves. However, something absolutely shocking had happened then. This mysterious type of power had seemingly ignored their defenses and went on to injure both of them. Even more shocking, they had felt countless of tiny blade-like objects cut into them all over their bodies. Their thighs, waists, arms, hands, face, forehead, and chest had all been cut in some way and almost became a bloody mess. Chapter 237, Magical Beast Invasion. Seeing the miserable situation the two envoys were in 100 meters away, Jian Chen felt the final dregs of his anger flowing away from him. Although that envoy had placed an unbelievably strong amount of pressure on him, the consequences they had both suffered were much worse. Not only were their bodies damaged, but it had also been an attack on their superiority as an Earth Saint Master. This by itself would have been enough to insult their honor. Jian Chen continued to survey the sight around him only to see the miserable environment that had been reduced to dust thanks to the sword qi he had emitted. Internally, he couldn't help but to gasp in shock. With the azure and violet sword spirits being so strong, the little amount of sword qi they had released from his body could only make him tremble with shock. An endless amount of shock, to be accurate. For only a small amount of sword qi to bring about such a large impact on an Earth Saint Master, that was unbelievable. If the extremely weak azure and violet sword spirits had such an overwhelming amount of power now, then Jian Chen couldn't even begin to imagine just what kind of terrifying amount of power they might have at their strongest point. This is how strong he is. How terrifying. The raggedy Yunli went pale in the face as he muttered to himself. His forehead glistened with sweat like the other two envoys by his side. With his clothes no longer doing a proper job, every inch of his body could be seen with wounds and blood dripping all over. If it were not for the fact that he were bleeding, then no one would have believed that he had been injured. The people in Jian Chen's eyes had been completely terrified at his power. Looking at the three of them, he couldn't help but take pleasure in their pain. With a faint smile, he spoke out at last, "Lord Yunli, senior envoys, are you all fine now?" With each word spoken, Jian Chen took another step toward them. "Brother Jian Chen, don't come any closer." Seeing how Jian Chen was slowly advancing, Yunli couldn't help but feel startled as he cried out loud while simultaneously taking a few steps back as well. From the sudden event that had just transpired, Yunli was so terrified that his courage had completely been obliterated. That unbelievable amount of sword qi was far too terrifying, and if his reaction speed had been any slower, then he had no doubts that he too would have been reduced to nothing more than dust. The two envoys also took a few steps back as they looked at Jian Chen with some dread. At that moment, they had realized a few more things than Yunli. Both of them were painfully aware that despite the saint force they had been so proud of, against this threat, they might as well have had nothing to protect themselves with. Seeing how the two Earth Saint Masters had been reduced to such a state due to the azure and violet sword spirits, Jian Chen couldn't help but feel some self-satisfaction. "Lord Yunli and senior envoys, please forgive this one. My outburst was uncontrollable for a moment, but it is no longer a problem." Looking around the garden and its obliterated state, the two envoys couldn't help but have an extremely grim expression on their faces. That power just now, just what was it? Jian Chen shook his head with a sigh. "Envoys, please forgive this one. There's just some things that this one cannot speak of. However, that outburst of power just now wasn't under my control. If this one has committed any offenses, this one hopes the seniors forgive it." There is no problem at all. If we are in such a situation like this, then it is our fault completely. If I had not tried to test you with my qi, then that power of yours would never have manifested. The gentle-looking envoy immediately responded. After he had come to Wake City, he had heard about Jian Chen's achievements so far. The one called Jian Chen, he couldn't help but wonder just what type of person this one was. They had also wanted to test his strength just to see if he was as amazing as Lord Yunli said he was. However, they had never expected that in a single experiment, they had eaten such a heavy loss and their face had been lost as well. With this, the cold-looking envoy looked at the other one with a meaningful glare. "This is your fault for looking for trouble." Hearing that, the first envoy couldn't help but laugh sheepishly. "Jian Chen, if we have offended you, we do hope that you do not take it to heart." Hurriedly, Jian Chen replied back, "How could that be? Your words should be coming from me. I truly do wish that seniors do not take offense." "Senior envoys, brother Jian Chen, because of this recent destruction, why don't we switch places to talk?" Yunli spoke up suddenly. Despite having a body full of injuries, they were nothing more than superficial wounds and would be nothing more than a hindrance. Seeing how the two envoys and Jian Chen had made up, Yunli couldn't help but sigh in relief secretly. Afterward, the three followed Yunli to an even more elegant lounge. On their way to the hall, however, many guards gave strange looks at the ragged condition Yunli and the two envoys were in, but no one said a thing. A little while later, the four finally arrived in the quiet halls where they began to talk to each other. Finally, Jian Chen had found out the envoys' names as well as understanding their natures a little bit more. The two envoys were brothers from the same parents, but their characters had been the exact opposite. The kindly one was the older brother named Cat. Of the two, he was the well-natured one and only had a smile on his face, allowing people to feel at ease with him. The other person was the younger brother, Katafei. Compared to his older brother, he was rather cold and silent, causing people to feel as if he was extremely distant from them. After the talks, Cat had continuously tried to wrestle Jian Chen's identity from him, but each time it was carelessly answered with a vague response. Even Cat had realized later that Jian Chen wasn't willing to answer such a question, so he ceased to ask such questions in order to avoid being confused and to avoid incurring Jian Chen's wrath. After the situation in the garden, Cat didn't dare to underestimate Jian Chen. At this moment, Duo Li had came back with a serious expression. After greeting the envoys, he immediately turned to Yunli. "My lord, a report just came in. There's a large wave of magical beasts heading out from the forests toward Wake City." Suddenly, everyone there stopped talking as Yunli gave a heavy stare. "How many are there?" "Many, just far too many for us to even count." Duo Li replied gravely. "Was there any traces of a Class 5 magical beast?" Cat asked. "Our reports say the scouts are too afraid of entering the magical beast mountain range. At the most, they'll enter the outskirts and so they weren't able to find any traces of it." Duo Li held his hands in an apologetic manner. "Duo Li, prepare the entire city immediately. Withdraw the scouts and shut the city gates to prevent anyone from leaving." Yunli thundered as he jumped from his seat to run out of the room. Chapter 238, The eve before the invasion. With Yunli immediately announcing the start of the magical beast wave, the entirety of Wake City had spread the news like wildfire. Suddenly, the entire city exploded into action, as every single mercenary group that heard the news immediately trekked toward the city gates with their brethren to prepare. With the news of combat to be close at hand, the atmosphere was unnaturally serious, but at the same time, everyone was rather excited. The moment Jian Chen left the Lord's mansion, he returned back to the Kai clan where the 7 great Saint Masters and 100 other members of the Flame Mercenaries ran up to greet him. On the road, not a single caravan could be seen anymore, only a large amount of heavily armored mercenary groups heading toward the same destination. Among them, many of the mercenaries walked with an excited look to their faces. This time, the mercenary union in Wake City had issued a report that if they were able to provide the left ear of a magical beast, then they would be able to claim the money reward for killing a magical beast of its rank. The more ears they collected, the more rewards they could collect. While the magical beast wave was extremely dangerous, where one could lose their life if not careful, the allure of a monetary reward was tempting to those not afraid of death. However, this sum of money was all paid for by the city lord personally. Though it was not a small amount of money, with Wake City being so close to the magical beast mountain range and monster cores being a good source of money, it could be said that both Wake City and the lord were rich. Otherwise, they would have never been able to afford the type of walls a first-class city would have. When Jian Chen led the 100 men to the city gates 1,000 meters away, they suddenly found it harder to move as a large throng of men crowded the area and made it impossible to move. At this, Jian Chen merely stepped back and spoke out to the 7 great Saint Masters behind him, "Clear the way for us." The 7 great Saint Masters were all famous people within Wake City, with many people knowing who they were. So, many people immediately cleared a path for them, since many of the men felt intimidated by their presence. Exchanging places with Jian Chen, the 7 men's presence spiked in intensity as Duo Kong shouted out, "Fellow brothers, please make way." Under their control, the amount of power exuding from them had caused the road in front of them to suddenly clear out as if a sharp sword had cut through it and forced the group of people to move off to the side. Isn't that the captain of the Golden Dragon mercenaries? I didn't think he'd be here. That's the captain of the hot-blooded mercenaries as well. I've heard rumors that they dissolved their mercenary groups to join another group called the Flame Mercenaries. Though, I'm not sure if it's true or not. The moment the 7 great Saint Masters showed their faces, they had immediately garnered the attention of everyone who began to talk about them. Hidden behind the large group, Jian Chen followed the 7 great Saint Masters without gaining anyone's attention. Just as the group was 500 meters away from the walls, suddenly a large commotion could be heard up ahead. Then, a heavily armored soldier came walking towards Jian Chen. It was the commander, Duo Li. Brother Jian Chen, the Lord and senior envoys are waiting for you at the walls. Allow me to accompany you. The moment Commander Duo Li saw Jian Chen, his voice grew even more polite than before. Walking ahead of the group, Jian Chen returned the smile. Then if you would please do me the honor in leading. Afterward, among the astonished stares of everyone else, Jian Chen and Duo Li left together toward the city gates. The walls of Wake City were that of the same standards of the walls in a first-class city. They were 40 meters tall and 20 meters thick. On top of the walls, there were all sorts of soldiers of various strengths. Not only that, but many strong mercenaries were also on top of the wall. There were also 30 magical crystal cannons mounted over the walls with 5 mercenaries manning each one with a trunk full of monster cores. Commander Duo Li brought Jian Chen to Lord Yunli, who was staring out beyond the city walls with a serious expression. By his side, there were a few well-known figures of Wake City and the 2 envoys. Both of them were wearing black-colored robes and did not look like they were ready to talk. Even if someone were to try to talk to them, it looked as if the envoys wouldn't even bother to pretend to notice them. Lord Yunli, what is the situation looking like now? Jian Chen spoke softly to the Lord. Yunli continued to stare out beyond the city without a change in his expression. It's not looking reassuring. This time's magical beast wave has way more magical beasts than before. Brother Jian Chen, take a look. Their numbers are almost immeasurable. Jian Chen grew solemn after hearing that as he looked to where Yunli was pointing only to see a black storm of magical beasts slowly make their way toward the city. He couldn't even make out a single magical beast's body, let alone count them. With this spectacle, Jian Chen's eyes could only narrow in concentration. For the mentally stupid magical beasts to walk forward in such a manner like this, there must be a Class 5 magical beast commanding them. After all, they possessed an intellect that while beneath that of a human, it was enough for them to control other magical beasts. This magical beast wave is quite peculiar. Lord Yunli, I remember the last magical beast wave had magical beasts that just recklessly threw themselves at the walls. How is it this time they are walking in such a disciplined manner? A white-haired elder spoke out in confusion. That's right, the last time Wake City was invaded, it was completely different from this one. Another middle-aged man spoke as he looked at the incoming wave with worry. After the 2 had spoken, the men standing by Yunli's side began to debate among themselves. They weren't men of lesser intelligence, each one of them could realize that something was amiss in this wave. Seeing that everyone had felt something was strange about this wave, Yunli knew that it was no use in trying to hide the secret anymore. Without pondering any longer, he spoke out loud, everyone, the truth is, this magical beast wave has a Class 5 magical beast hidden within it. For our Wake City, this magical beast wave could be said to be a test of survival of an extremely grim nature. Chapter 239, The Beginning Prominence of One's Reputation. After hearing Yunli's confession, everyone's face immediately grew deathly serious. Yet, no one was making a loud fuss since each one of them could roughly guess that this was the reason why the magical beast wave was so different this time around. With a magical beast wave happening in Wake City every 20 or so years, there were plenty of people who would come to participate. So for those who had been in Wake City for many years, they had understood the nature of how a magical beast waves worked. This new wave was especially weird. If the normally dumb magical beasts were suddenly walking in the same manner as a disciplined army, this could only be the work of a Class 5 magical beast. How troublesome this is. A Class 5 magical beast is extremely strong, and even an Earth Saint Master would have trouble being victorious if they fight alone. With our Wake City having no experts of our own to help defend against a Class 5 magical beast, it looks like we can only hope to try and employ a strategy of overwhelming them with our numbers. An expensively robed elder spoke gravely as the news of a Class 5 magical beast had registered completely with him. Against a Class 5 magical beast, we would have to use an entire crowd of great Saint Masters in order to have a hope of overwhelming it. Those who are of the Saint Master level wouldn't have a chance of penetrating its defenses, therefore no hope of doing any type of damage to it at all. Spoke another middle-aged man cloaked in a red robe. He was sturdy in stature and radiated a strong killing intent as he looked at the magical beasts. That's right, a Class 5 magical beast is something that only those at the Great Saint Master level could hope to damage. Even then, if there is a Class 5 magical beast that specializes in defense, then Great Saint Masters couldn't even hope to damage it, even if it stood still for us to hit it. I truly hope that this Class 5 magical beast won't be too hard to deal with, otherwise, Wake City will be extremely hard to defend. A short-haired man spoke out to the others. Words are easy to say, but if a Class 5 magical beast truly does show up, all of our Great Saint Masters shouldn't be focused on it alone. Aside from the Class 5 magical beast, there are still a multitude of other magical beasts, certainly including many Class 4 magical beasts. If we were to have all of our Great Saint Masters fighting the Class 5 magical beast, then how would we deal with the others? What are you afraid of? Our Wake City has at least 100,000 mercenaries and easily double that in city soldiers. Although we cannot go one-to-one with those beasts, our men will be victorious. I don't believe that our combined mass of people will not be able to defend against these magical beasts, nor will they be able to stand against the magical crystal cannons we have on the walls. Hearing the men begin to quarrel, Yunli cleared his throat. Do not panic, everyone. While a Class 5 magical beast brought us a great deal of pressure, but that has been dealt with. Our enemies right now are those of the Class 4 magical beast and lower. Despite this, there are still a mass amount of magical beasts to deal with, so everyone cannot let down their guards. If we cannot match them with our numbers, then we will fight them with our experience. Lord Yunli had shocked everyone with his words. My lord, what are you saying? The Class 5 magical beast has been dealt with? Could it be there are some Earth Saint Masters in Wake City right now? Yunli nodded his head gravely with a faint smile on his face. That's right, so everyone shouldn't pay attention to the Class 5 magical beast and focus your attention on the other lower-leveled ones. My lord, then do you know where these seniors are? We would like to pay our respects to them. Someone immediately called out. Yunli shook his head with an apologetic expression. My apologies, but the envoys had made it clear that their identities would not be exposed. If they become displeased, then it would be quite disastrous for our Wake City. Hearing that, everyone could only secretly sigh in sadness. Earth Saint Masters were incredibly rare in Wake City, and even in the continent, they were considered experts of the higher order. To these people, they truly wished to pay their respects to them in order to make friends with them and hopefully gain their assistance in any matter. After Yunli had spoken, they had given up on their idea of getting close to them. However, the word envoys had alerted them of a few things worth remembering. Jian Chen, who was standing nearby, wasn't overly noticeable. Instead, he spent his time looking over 100 meters away at the two black-robed envoys. He couldn't help but think to when the two were forced into a miserable position, and smiled as a result. Who knew that the two Earth Saint Master envoys hired by Wake City from Monarch City would have ended up in such a sad condition by him? When Jian Chen's eyes hovered over the two envoys, Kadata suddenly felt that he was being stared at. Turning to look at him, he had a kind smile on his face as usual. Brother Jian Chen, come here and let's have a talk, shall we? Although being 100 meters apart and a noisy crowd divided the two, his voice could still be heard loud and clear as if amplified by some unknown mean so that it felt as if the two were talking right next to each other. Katata's voice had suddenly attracted the attention of everyone else in Yunli's company, who immediately turned to look at the two black-robed envoys. However, their own strengths weren't enough to perceive anything out of the ordinary from the envoy's strength, so when they tried to inspect the two for a moment, they finally lost interest and turned away once more. At the request of an Earth Saint Master like Katata, Jian Chen didn't dare to refuse. Bidding goodbye to Yunli, he immediately headed for the envoy's position. Jian Chen. HM. Seeing Jian Chen walk by, the white-haired elder's eyebrows furrowed together as he sounded out Jian Chen's name before his eyes suddenly took on an astonished glint as he stared at him. Seeing how the elder was standing perplexed now, the cyan-robed elder to his side whispered to him, "Elder Hiyu, what's wrong?" The white-haired elder continued to stare at Jian Chen's retreating back, whispering so that Jian Chen couldn't hear. He said, "I've heard the name Jian Chen before. Isn't that the same name as the person who destroyed the Zhou and Tianxiong clans?" The cyan-robed elder started when he heard that. Immediately, his eyes flew over to Jian Chen's back and sucked in a deep breath of air sharply. "Elder Hiyu, I had completely forgotten about the matter until you mentioned it." According to the guards who had fled from the Tianxiong clan, the one who eradicated the Tianxiong clan and single-handedly beat 9 great saint masters was a 20-year-old youth who is apparently quite handsome to look at. "The youth who just walked by us seems to be a good fit. Take another look. This has to be the very same Jian Chen who destroyed both clans." Chapter 240. 6 Cycles of an Earth Saint Master. The two elders continued to talk gently, but with everyone standing close by having a strong sense of hearing, they had naturally heard the words being spoken. "What? The youth that was just standing here was that Jian Chen? He's so young though, how could he be so strong then? Just how many youths have you seen wield so much power?" A man spoke in awe. Right, he truly is so young and yet so unique." After the 2 days where 2 major clans had been annihilated, everyone was painfully aware of the name Jian Chen. However, with the incoming invasion of the magical beasts, everyone had placed the wave in the front of their minds and had forgotten about the clans. This was a point of life or death for them, and so the deaths of the Zhou and Tianxiong clan were not worth a higher priority and quickly receded into obscurity. Jian Chen's name was no longer mentioned either and did not come to mind as quickly. "This can't be said for sure." A tall man sneered with some contempt. "Those were nothing more than rumors, and none of us had seen the matter for ourselves personally. But to me, I'm sure these rumors are only partial truths and were greatly exaggerated. Just look how young he is, he can't be a year past 20. How can someone so young cultivate to such a powerful level? Maybe he began cultivating when he was in his mother's womb. We can't say for certain that the destruction of the Zhou and Tianxiong clan was done by one person or with the help of a few others." The others began to nod their heads. What this man had said had a great deal of logic behind it. Rumors were rumors after all. Each one of them had weathered many storms and listened to many rumors, but only a small part of them were true, while the vast majority were half-truths or not even truths at all. Hearing the group trying to guess at the real truth, Yunli couldn't help but reveal a knowing smile on his face, yet at the same time, his body couldn't help but shake and tremble for a moment. He could only lament over the fact that he too was not aware of Jian Chen's strength, but he did know that the event regarding him and the envoy in the garden not too long ago had forced both the envoys and him to take a major loss. This wasn't something that Yunli was willing to share with the group. Jian Chen arrived at where the envoys stood with a smile. Whether or not Wake City can be successfully defended depends on senior envoys. Katata could only laugh as he looked at Jian Chen with an amicable smile. It was this smile that made everyone want to be good friends with him. "Jian Chen, since I'm older than you, might I call you Junior Jian Chen, or is that too much?" Katata asked casually. "There's no problem at all, of course." Jian Chen replied with a smile. Even though Katata was smiling at him with such a kind look, he was still on guard. In his experience, if Katata's expression was a genuine feeling from the heart, then he was definitely a person worthy of being a friend with. However, if it was nothing more than something fake, then the man's strength should be feared and guarded against. Katata looked at Jian Chen closely. Junior Jian Chen, although my brother and I are both Earth Saint Masters, the strength of a Class 5 magical beast is still something that can go against our expectations. Even if the two of us were to join hands to kill the magical beast, it would still be a difficult task, so therefore, I sincerely hope that Junior can lend us a hand if the time arises. With a self-deprecating smile, Jian Chen replied, Senior Envoy, you must be joking. I've only the strength of a great Saint Master. How would I fight against a Class 5 magical beast? Doing so would be the same as throwing my life away. Even though he had said that, Jian Chen's heart couldn't help but thirst to fight against a Class 5 magical beast, but at the same time he knew that his strength wasn't sufficient enough to fight against one unless he used the strength of the Azure and Violet Sword Chi. Junior, you truly are modest. In the garden you had displayed such an explosive amount of power that frightened even my brother and me. Even now, my body still aches from the pain I felt then. If Junior is to use that same power, then I am sure that the Class 5 magical beast will fall to your hands. Katata said. Jian Chen had a bitter smile on his face. Senior Envoys, that very power isn't something I can control. Nonetheless, this one will strive hard to defend Wake City against the magical beast wave. Ha, as long as you mean those words, then my heart will truly be at ease. Katata spoke with some relief. Taking note of the change in his tone, Jian Chen quickly continued, Senior Envoys, with you two here, this magical beast wave will be no problem, correct? Hearing that, Katata could only sigh. True, before, I didn't even bother to think the Class 5 magical beast to be my enemy. But now that I am standing here, I don't dare belittle it. Jian Chen's expression changed as well. Could it be that the Class 5 magical beast will be hard to deal with even if both seniors join together? He asked with surprise. Correct. Katata's smile suddenly disappeared without a trace as it grew unnaturally serious. When my brother and I were standing here, we both detected a presence so strong that it could suppress even the both of us. Katata's evenly spoken words had been like a clap of thunder in Jian Chen's ears. He couldn't help but be utterly surprised as he muttered, how is that possible? A Class 5 magical beast with a presence so strong that it could suppress both seniors. Just how strong is that magical beast? Katata smiled bitterly. Junior Jian Chen, it seems to me that you don't know how Earth Saint Masters are classified, allow me to explain it to you. He paused for a moment to draw breath before continuing, Saints, Great Saints, Saint Master, and Great Saint Masters all are split into 3 additional layers. Those 3 layers are the primary, middle, and peak layers. After the Earth Saint Master realm, there is suddenly 6 different layers of strength. We call these the 6 cycles. The first cycle is weakest and the 6th cycle is the highest. In the case that one breaks through to the 6th cycle of the Earth Saint Master realm, the following stage is the Heaven Saint Master realm. My brother Katafii and I are only at the 2nd cycle in ranking. As for the hidden Class 5 magical beast, I suspect it is at the 4th cycle in terms of strength at the very least. It's even possible that it is at the 5th cycle, where it is many times stronger than my brother and I combined. Jian Chen's face grew deathly serious as he listened to Katata. When Katata had said that Earth Saint Masters were divided into different levels of strength, he couldn't help but wonder how strong the Class 5 magical beast that was found in the forest was. Chapter 241, Start of the Invasion. Katata continued to speak, and Earth Saint Master are separated evenly between the cycles. A 1st cycle Earth Saint Master is as far away from a 6th cycle as a Saint Master is from a peak Great Saint Master. There is no chance of victory for the Saint Master, and even if my brother and I were to join hands, we both are only at the 2nd cycle level. If we were to join hands, then we would be able to fight against a 3rd cycle Earth Saint Master, but against a 4th cycle Earth Saint Master, then there is no chance. After all this, but our opponent is also a magical beast. Hearing Katata's explanations, Jianchen couldn't help but be extremely serious. With this, he had finally understood just how wide the differences were between each cycle of an Earth Saint Master. A first cycle Earth Saint Master was to a Saint Master as was a sixth cycle Earth Saint Master was to a peak Great Saint Master. At this moment, Jianchen couldn't help but be anxious as he thought about Wake City's chances of surviving the wave now. Although Wake City wasn't his home and had no feelings of it, Jianchen had no desire to see the entire population of a city succumb to a magical beast invasion. Wake City's gates had long since closed and the traveling merchants still on the road had been notified of the magical beast wave long ago. So they had all taken a lengthy detour around Wake City's vicinity before taking shelter in a nearby city and waited for the wave to be over before continuing on with their travels. Far away, the dense crowd of magical beasts continued to stamp in a slow trail toward Wake City. Aside from the heavy stomps of their feet, not a single roar could be heard, and from the looks of it, it seemed as if these magical beasts were just soldiers practicing a drill. Ho! Suddenly, the gigantic roar of a magical beast came reverberating from the depths of the magical beast mountain range. Its roar was so loud that even the stones on top of the gates started trembling from the sound. This sudden roar had jolted the tens of thousands of magical beasts whose eyes suddenly grew fearful. Immediately, the magical beasts suddenly stopped where they stood in unison 5 kilometers away from the city walls. Looking at the crowd of magical beasts stop right in front of the city walls almost, Katata let out a breath of air. This hidden class 5 magical beast is very intelligent. It has fought against humanity multiple times and knows how our magical crystal cannons work. At this distance, the magical beasts are just outside the range of our magical crystal cannons. Katata immediately looked to his still silent brother Katafii. Katafii, our opponent is far stronger than what we thought. By now, it is too late for Monarch City to send any more reinforcements, so it is up to us to defend the city behind us. Katafii nodded his head without a single break in his expression. His eyes still pointed far ahead as if he were trying to find the Class 5 magical beast. Ever since the garden, he had only spoke a single phrase. Throw down the armored wall. Suddenly at Yunli's command, a large sheet of steel plating suddenly dropped down from the city walls and fully covered the entire city. From far away, it looked as if Wake City had been fully encased by a steel plating. This steel plating was a meter thick and were connected to one another by a steel chain. With each steel plating being so thick, it would be able to repel a Class 3 magical beast with no problem. Seeing how the steel platings were descending down from the walls, Jianchen couldn't help but sigh in admiration. With a steel plating like the one right in front of him, then the defenses would be extraordinarily strong and could withstand a large amount of force for some time. This truly was another example of how Wake City's defenses could be said to be on par with a first-class city. Commence the firing of the middle-tier magic crystal cannons. Yunli barked out an order. Straight after his command, Katata had an astonished look on his face. I didn't think Wake City would have a middle-tier magical crystal cannon. Ha, they truly do deserve to be so near the magical beast mountain range. How rich, a middle-tier magical crystal cannon can fire up to a range of 10 kilometers, that's double the range of a primary-tier magical crystal cannon and can definitely hit those magical beasts. The soldiers began to scamper here and there to follow Yunli's command. The magical crystal cannons were constructed so that they would take in the energy from the monster cores and would then fire out a special type of energy. On the Tian Yuan continent, there were 3 types of magical crystal cannons: primary tier, middle tier, and advanced tier. A primary tier cannon used class 1 and 2 monster cores as an energy source, but the energy output was not always the same. Middle tier cannons used class 3 and 4 monster cores, but an advanced tier cannon required a class 5 monster core at the least to supply the fuel. A primary tier cannon had a range of 3 kilometers while a middle tier cannon had a range of 8 kilometers. On the other hand, an advanced tier cannon could shoot up to a terrifying range of 20 kilometers. This was the best offensive and defensive besiegement weapon. Magical crystal cannons were welcome to every country and city on the Tian-Yuan continent, with primary tier cannons being practically universal. Each and every major city had a few ready for use, while always hoping to come across an advanced tier cannon. Each fortified stronghold by the empire borders had a few advanced tier cannons, but with it requiring class 5 monster cores, they could fire it once. Thus, they preferred to use it in a disastrous situation or as their last resort, but no attackers would dare try to survive one of those shots head-on. Another reason was that with each shot of the advanced tier cannons, it was the equivalent of shooting away money. After the middle tier cannon was charged up, an extremely tremendous amount of explosive energy began to stir within the cannon, making people feel as if it was about to explode. For those with a small amount of courage, they wouldn't dare to get any closer. In truth, there had been many cases where the cannon wasn't able to handle the extreme amount of energy stirring inside. When that would happen, the energy exploded from within, causing massive damage to everyone around. However, this was a risk that every country was willing to face for the sake of a better chance of winning. A few breaths later, the middle-tier cannon was finally done charging, and with another order from Yunli, the 4 cannons mounted on top of the walls fired immediately. Bang! With an ear-deafening blast, a gigantic blast of energy shot out from the middle-tier cannon at an incredible speed toward the crowd of magical beasts 5 kilometers away. Boom! Following a loud resonating blast, a large cloud of dust filled the air as the explosive energy destroyed anything within a 30-meter radius. Bits and pieces of magical beasts could be seen flying through the air in every direction. The might of a middle-tier cannon was extraordinary and could destroy a Class 3 magical beast with ease. Even a Class 4 magical beast wouldn't be able to take a blast like that easily. If hit directly, they would be instantly fried, and a Class 5 magical beast would at the very least be injured to some degree. The 4 middle-tier magical crystal cannons laid claim to at least 30 Class 3 magical beasts, a good start. As if this was the start of the battle, the magical beasts instantly grew restless and slammed their fists and legs where they stood while snarling angrily. Reload the middle-tier magical crystal cannons and fire straight for the higher-leveled magical beasts. Yunli thundered at the soldiers near the cannons. Yes, at the same time, another heaven-shaking roar came from the magical beast mountain range. This roar was louder than before and spanned for seemingly 20 kilometers, so that even Jian Chen's ears began to ring afterward. Following this roar, it was as if the magical beasts had received an order. With an explosive roar, they all began to charge recklessly toward the city walls. Thousands of magical beasts charged at the walls with reckless abandonment, causing those on the top of the walls to pale for a moment. Even those at the top of the wall could feel a slight tremor growing stronger and stronger. Prepare the crossbows. Yunli barked out another command. Immediately, a series of holes spanning a foot wide opened up within the walls, and upon further assessment, there were about 100 of them. Then one by one, strong-looking men began to prepare the crossbows as intense-looking bolts protruded from the holes. The tips of the bolts looked like they were made with steel. Even the shaft resembled that of a superior metal. Each one of these bolts were 2 meters long, and because of that, they required an extremely strong and big crossbow to fire. These weapons were able to pierce through the body of a Class 3 magical beast. Even the ones at the peak level would be tremendously harmed. When the thousands of magical beasts were 3 kilometers away, Yunli gave out an order: fire the primary tier magical crystal cannons, let them feel the pain. Bang! 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 With a slightly less loud explosion, the 10 primary tier cannons fired straight at the magical beasts with an extensively large amount of firepower. The bursts of energy landed firmly against the incoming crowd, completely obliterating large groups. After a short period of time, the primary tier cannons were ready to fire once more, and with another bang, a large amount of energy exploded forth toward the crowd of magical beasts. The blast sent a good few of them flying away, while the remnants of a few magical beasts could be seen spinning through the air. The magical crystal cannons fired a few more rounds before the magical beasts were only 500 meters away. Fire the crossbows! Yunli cried out. Chapter 242, Desperate Close Combat, Fire the Crossbows. With Yun Li's command, the men stationed within the walls began to fire the crossbows at a lightning-quick speed. The bolts flew through the air with a whistling sound that left the onlookers quite terrified. PCH. 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 With the tremendous penetration force of the bolts, many of the Class 1 magical beasts were instantly speared through. Even as the bolts flew straight through the beasts, they did not slow down in the least. The bolts continued to fly through another 3 or 4 Class 1 magical beasts before finally losing their initial momentum, embedding themselves in one final beast. This volley of firepower had shot over 200 crossbolts, which ended up taking the lives of over 500 Class 1 magical beasts. After that, the second volley of fire immediately mowed down the frontmost magical beasts and filled the air with howls of pain and gunfire. From overhead, the cannons continued to fire down upon the mass of magical beasts that took even more lives. That didn't deter the lesser intelligent magical beasts at all. The scent of all the blood in the air had roused their bloodthirsty nature as they continued to roar out loud while increasing their pace toward the walls despite the continuous volley of fire directed at them. Boom! The magical beasts were now so close to the wall that some of them were now firmly striking at the armored plating on the walls. Following each blow, the steel plating began to tremble and vibrate while some parts of the metal defenses had begun to dent a little. A few of the more fragile magical beasts had begun to make use of their claws in hopes of damaging the steel plating, while some had resorted to biting the walls. Some had even managed to take advantage of the various cracks on the plating to climb up it. Seeing the larger magical beasts approach, Yun Li's eyes flashed dangerously as he shouted, "Douse them in hot oil." A vat of scalding hot oil was suddenly poured down from the walls and splashed down onto the magical beasts below. Immediately, the fur of those who got splashed by the oil caught fire before turning the magical beast into a moving bonfire. Underneath, countless of magical beasts howled miserably in pain as their entire bodies were submerged in the burning oil. As their fur caught fire, the fire and the oil began to cause a tremendous amount of damage to their bodies. There was an abundant source of hot oil thanks to the various stoves working to create some more. As the streams of hot oil fell down the walls, the entire ground below had become a sea of fire and misery as the beasts roared in pain. Afterward, a putrid smell wafted up and invaded everyone's noses. Wake City had no moat around, so the magical beasts had no chance to find a source of water to douse themselves in to remove the flames and oil. There were many magical beasts in close proximity, and with their fur being extremely flammable, the fire had quickly spread out to encompass everyone. Underneath the walls, the magical beasts were in chaos. Even though they lacked intelligence, even the dumbest of magical beasts could tell that they were on fire and would die if they stayed there. Consequently, the magical beasts all scattered to get away from the splash radius of the oil. However, the oil continued to rain down from the walls. Despite the steady stream, their supply was not endless and eventually ran out. In the half hour of warfare, the oil supply had all but ran out, but the damage had been done. The oil had damaged plenty of magical beasts and burned a good amount of them to death. Now that there was no more threat of the oil, the still alive magical beasts quickly stamped out the remaining fire and continued to charge at the wall once more. The more nimbler magical beasts began to climb up the walls once more alongside a large number of vipers. Those who ran up the walls were immediately cut down by multiple saint weapons, sending their bisected bodies flying back down to the earth. At the same time, a soldier quickly ran to where Yun Li. "A report for the Lord, the crossbows are all finished firing, not a single bolt is left unshot." Looking at the scene below, Yun Li nodded slightly before crying out, "Open the gates and attack." Wake City's most terrifying weapon against the magical beast waves were the magical crystal cannons, oil, and crossbows. The cannons were for long-ranged fighting and were used to target and kill the strongest magical beasts. As the magical beasts approached, then they would switch to the oil and crossbows. After a good amount of time passed, both the oil and crossbow ammunition had been all used up. At this moment, the only thing left to do was attack. Slowly, The gates creaked open as the magical beasts changed directions to charge in between the opening gates. However, the moment they stepped inside, the various mercenaries inside blocked them. Fellow brothers, charge! Work hard to collect those ears. Charge! The sparkling allure of a purple coin will soon lay within our pouches. Every single mercenary was boiling with excitement as their will to make battle soared into the air. One by one they charged through the open gates with their saint weapons leading the vanguard. With each swing a magical beast would fall to the ground, be split in two and rain down blood everywhere. Ho! A few magical beasts cried out in pain as they felt the chilling metal of the saint weapons bite into their bodies. In a flash, many more magical beasts were quickly cut to pieces and a few of the more nimble men quickly grabbed at their ears before happily storing them into their space belts. Hurry up and charge everyone. A huge pile of purple coins await us. Don't waste any time and hurry up, charge. A shout emerged from each mercenary as they charged toward the savage magical beasts almost as if they were pieces of coins. Because of the allure of money, these men were not afraid of death. Underneath the power of every mercenary, every single magical beast was swiftly harvested and stored away for future use. Over 200,000 mercenaries stormed out from Wake City to fight with the magical beasts in intense close combat. Every second a magical beast or mercenary fell to the ground and never get back up. Chapter 243, Several hundred Class 4 magical beasts on the wall. The magical crystal cannons continued to fire at anything within their 3-kilometer range, causing the ground below to have many holes. The soldiers in charge of recharging the cannons hurriedly scrambled about grabbing Class 2 monster cores from chests to load the cannons. Although Wake City was a third-class city, it was extremely close to the magical beast mountain range where monster cores were abundant. So after many years of savings, the amount of monster cores they had stored away were fully capable of empowering 10 different cannons for up to 2 or 3 days of shooting. Jian Chen and the 2 envoys stood on the city walls along with the great Saint Masters and Yun Li. Not a single one of them ran to participate since these Class 1 and Class 2 magical beasts could be taken care of by the mercenaries down below. For now, they would wait for the Class 4 magical beasts so they would not squander their energy on the lower-leveled ones. If they did, then who would protect everyone from the Class 4 magical beasts? On top of the wall, Jian Chen looked at the various magical beasts with a look of lament. There truly are many magical beasts gathered here. Cat Ada nodded his head in agreement. Although this is the first time I've come to help Wake City during a magical beast wave, I still think this amount of magical beasts is quite excessive. Take a look at the back, there's a few hundred magical beasts who haven't moved yet. Based on their presence, I can see that they are Class 4 magical beasts. Surveying the back, Jian Chen saw a wide variety of magical beasts of every size and shape waiting. They weren't moving toward Wake City at all and instead kept their distance. Jian Chen wasn't as strong as Cat Ada, so he couldn't tell just how strong they were. Despite the fact that several hundred Class 4 magical beasts sounded quite unbelievable, Jian Chen knew that Cat Ada wouldn't lie about such a thing. These Class 4 magical beasts are equal to great Saint Masters in terms of strength. If our Wake City has a few 100,000 men, then the amount of great Saint Master experts among them pales in comparison. There definitely isn't enough to fight against these Class 4 magical beasts. Right now we can only rely on the magical crystal cannons. With Wake City's 4 middle-tier magical crystal cannons, we should be able to do some damage to the Class 4 magical beasts. They're about 8 kilometers away anyway, that's within the range of those cannons. Cat Ada spoke seriously before waving his hand to Yun Li. Yun Li, have the 4 middle-tier magical crystal cannons aim at the back over there. Those are all Class 4 magical beasts, the cannons should be enough to kill them and the pressure on us will be lessened. Yes, Senior Envoy. Katada's words were like the commands from a superior officer to his subordinate, so Yun Li couldn't disobey. Without hesitation, Yun Li immediately ordered the 4 middle-tier cannons to aim at the Class 4 magical beasts and fire. Bang! The cannons fired and the energy within seemed as if it were a shooting star that flew through the air toward the middle of the magical beasts. The fortunate thing was that the group of Class 4 magical beasts were well within the range of the blast zone, and so the energy blasted the ground in the middle of the group, sending dirt flying everywhere as the wild energy wreaked havoc on everything. Immediately, many magical beasts were sent flying 20 meters away from the impact zone along with some body parts. Blood spilled like rain down below. Soon enough, the body parts fell back down into the dust storm, making visibility 0. Ho! The Class 4 magical beasts all cried out in anger and the injured ones all glared at Wake City dangerously. Their eyes were filled with hatred as they suddenly charged at the walls without the previous patience. Aim at that cluster of magical beasts once more with the middle-tier cannons, keep firing. Yunli called out with a hardened expression. From Katata's words, Yunli had guessed that that large amount of magical beasts were of the Class 4 level. Compared to the large amount of the magical beast numbers, the amount of great Saint Masters within the ranks of Wake City's soldiers and mercenaries was still far from the triple digits. At most, there were only a few dozen great Saint Masters that could stand their own against a Class 4 magical beasts, so for now the best way to deal with those magical beasts was to use the cannons to whittle away at their numbers. Thanks to the change of targets by the cannons, the previously safe and sound Class 4 magical beasts in the back had suffered a tremendous loss. The middle-tier cannons had brought about a disastrous amount of damage to their ranks, and with each new volley of cannon fire, even more lives were taken. A large amount of the magical beasts began to retreat as the cannons began to focus their fire on them. The remaining few began to snarl and roar as they charged at the walls. Because of the cannons, they had lost all rationality and in their bloodthirst, they threw the other magical beasts out of the way and even killed a few of the weaker ones in their rampage. At that moment, each one of the magical beasts had broken free from the fearful control of the Class 5 magical beast. The middle-tier cannons continued to fire and fill the skies with sounds from each blast. Time and time again, crowds of Class 4 magical beasts went up in smoke, leaving a crater in the ground below. The Class 4 magical beasts were incredibly fast however, as the middle-tier magical crystal cannons fired the fifth volley, they had already arrived within 500 meters of the wall. Because of the cannons, their numbers had went from several hundred to around 150 of them and a great deal of them were injured to some degree as well. Despite the good news however, the great Saint Masters still had extremely serious expressions on their faces. By then, before Yunli could say anything, the great Saint Masters immediately leaped off the walls down into the crowd of magical beasts. Only they could defend against the Class 4 magical beasts, and if those magical beasts were to fight against the saints or great saints, then there would be catastrophic damages to the human side. In a flash, the dozen great Saint Masters were all engaged in deep combat. At that moment, only Yunli, Jian Chen, and the two envoys were left on the walls without any other great Saint Master there. Even the 7 great Saint Masters from the Flame Mercenaries were beginning to fight the Class 4 magical beasts. Chapter 244, Jian Chen's action. A fast sword. The area around Wake City had already become a bloody battleground with 200,000 mercenaries and armored soldiers fighting by the city gates. They had already speared their way through a few kilometers and were soaked with the blood of a few magical beasts. In the back, many of the support soldiers streamed about the battleground with stretchers so that the fallen could be brought back to the city to recover. The entire battleground was dyed red with blood as the greasy smell of battle wafted through the air and into the noses of everyone fighting. Although the battle had only gone on for a small amount of time, the ground was littered with the corpses of magical beasts and humans alike. Every second a person would get injured while the next second another person would die. 100 Class 4 magical beasts and a few dozen great Saint Masters were fighting against each other, but the situation wasn't looking too well for the humans. A Class 4 magical beast required 2 great Saint Masters to fight against, but at the moment, each magical beast was fighting against 1 great Saint Master. For a short while, the great Saint Masters would be fine, but if time dragged on for too long, then the situation would be hard to tell. Since magical beasts had a natural superiority, humanity could only rely on their saint weapons to fight against the magical beasts, but when that ran out then their lives would be in extreme danger. The 10 magical crystal cannons on top of the city walls never stopped firing, so the air was filled with the tremors and ear-deafening blasts of explosions that claimed the lives of multiple magical beasts whenever they slammed against a group of them. As the war went on for a longer period of time, the amount of injured people increased as well. The stretchers of men continued to weave in through the city gates with the injured men laying on them crying out in pain. Many of them were missing an arm or a leg, and so the amount of people fighting against the magical beasts began to lessen. Thus, the pressure began to increase on everyone. If this were to go on for any longer, then the surrender of Wake City would only be a matter of time. On top of the walls, Lord Yunli looked at Jian Chen and the 2 envoys with a troubled look. This magical beast wave has more magical beasts than before and even more class 4 magical beasts than anticipated. Their numbers far outweigh our great Saint Masters, and if this goes on for any longer, then even if the class 5 magical beast doesn't attack, the class 4 magical beasts will trample Wake City. I've looked at the records of the past magical beast waves and I'm afraid that this wave is definitely the most serious one. The amount of class 4 magical beasts has never gone over 50, but there are well over several hundred of them. God damn it, could all of the class 4 magical beasts from the Magical Beast Mountain Range have come running over? Yunli wiped at his eyebrows to clear away the sweat. The 2 envoys didn't say a word, so Yunli continued to speak. Senior envoys, do you have any solutions on how to deal with this situation? Katata shook his head with an equally serious expression. I've none. Right now we shouldn't make a move yet. That hidden class 5 magical beast is extremely strong, so my brother and I must remain here and save up our strength until the moment of its appearance to ensure the best chance. If we waste our energy now, then when that class 5 magical beast attacks, we won't have a chance of defeating it. Yun Li's face grew whiter and whiter as he listened to Katata's words. His entire body began to shake as he observed the battleground below them. His eyes couldn't help but widen and tear up a bit as he muttered, could it be? Could this day be the last day for my Wake City? The 2 Earth Saint Master envoys were the greatest stabilizers to Yun Li's heart, but with Katata's words revealing that it would be difficult to deal with the hidden class 5 magical beast even if he and his brother joined hands, those words were like a clap of thunder to Yun Li's eardrums. By now, he was feeling a great deal of despair. Seeing the look on Yun Li's face, Jian Chen let out a breath of air. Then I'll go down to help. The threat of the class 4 magical beasts is far too big for us to ignore anyways. With that, Jian Chen leaped down the 50-meter-tall city wall. In midair, Jian Chen's body began to speed up somehow like a speeding bullet toward the class 4 magical beasts. The new member of the Flame Mercenaries, Duo Kong, was currently fighting against a class 4 magical beast. This class 4 magical beast was a 3-meter-long black cheetah with extremely fast movements. Both of its paws swished through the air as the extremely sharp talons flew at Duo Kong. Along with the claws, the cheetah roared loudly with a jaw full of blood from the various times Duo Kong was hurt. The black cheetah's eyes were crimson with bloodlust as they glared at Duo Kong almost as if he were its prey. Growling with an angry snarl, its entire body suddenly disappeared in a blur as it shot toward Duo Kong. In that instant its sharp talons glistened in the sunlight as it flew at Duo Kang's chest. Duo Kang's eyes flashed dangerously with no fear at all as the Saint Force enhanced weapon in his hands slashed at the cheetah. The sword and talons met against each other with a large ear-screeching sound as the blast of the impact forced Duo Kong to fly back a few steps. Duo Kang's Saint weapon wasn't enough to cause any sort of damage to the cheetah. The cheetah was momentarily sent back before instantly bounding forward to slash at Duo Kang's back from behind. Duo Kong had not yet fully stabilized his footing after the cheetah had sent him flying backward, so it was hard for him to attack the beast with the same strength as before. Helplessly, he could only bring his sword across his body to protect himself against the claws. The cheetah's claws swiped at Duo Kang's Saint weapon, causing the sword to be knocked back a bit. With the sword firmly out of place, the cheetah suddenly opened its jaws in an effort to bite Duo Kong. With his saint weapon out of the way, Duo Kang's actions were severely limited. Seeing the wide-open jaws of the cheetah, Duo Kang's face suddenly changed and he abruptly swung his head out of the way. With its jaws wide open, the cheetah emitted an ear-deafening roar as it tried to clamp down its jaws onto Duo Kang's chest. Duo Kang's face was extremely serious. This cheetah had been exceedingly clever when it had attacked him with its claws, leaving him unable to retaliate at all. It would seem that today would be a hard day to escape calamity, since this magical beast was even stronger than he was, and Duo Kang wasn't able to fight against the cheetah with his saint weapon. This time as Duo Kang dodged the fangs, he could feel some color come back to his face. If he were just 1 second slower dodging the fangs, then his chest would have become a bloody mess. What a troublesome matter this is. Duo Kang had a look of despair. Right now he was almost at the whim of the cheetah. With the cheetah attacking at any time, it was getting harder and harder to dodge. This time, a small childlike sized tail suddenly wrapped around Duo Kang's neck, making all movement impossible for him now. Once more, Duo Kang's face turned deathly pale as his eyes gleamed with despair. With his neck captured by the tail, he could no longer dodge the next strike from the black cheetah. Even his saint weapon, the most important item to his life, wouldn't help him here. He would sooner die than relinquish his saint weapon. The iron scent of blood stung Duo Kang's nose as the cheetah's bloody jaw encaptured Duo Kang's eyes once more. Just before Duo Kang was ready to accept his death, a silver light suddenly flashed in the corner of his eyes. Startled, Duo Kang could only see a silver lightning-like trail of light fly straight through the cheetah's throat. The bloody jaws of the cheetah immediately came to a close just an inch away from Duo Kang's chest. The putrid scent of its jaws was so nauseating to Duo Kang's nose that he didn't dare breathe. Duo Kang was instantly dazed, but the moment he saw the long blade insert itself deep within the cheetah's throat, a look of pure joy appeared within his eyes. This blade was one he was extremely familiar with because he knew just who the owner was. Duo Kang couldn't help but feel extremely grateful after his narrow escape from death. Turning his head to look at the 20-year-old youth to the side, he called out emotionally, "Captain." On this road between life or death, Duo Kang finally realized just how beautiful living was. Although Duo Kang had been in many life or death situations, he had never been in such a perilous situation as this one. If Jian Chen was a second too slow, then his life would have been forfeit and his body a corpse. Jian Chen slowly took the light wind sword out from the cheetah's neck and spoke out to Duo Kang, "Go help out the others, make sure our flame mercenaries lose as few men as possible." "Yes, Captain." Duo Kang immediately responded. Grabbing at the tail still enwrapped around his neck, he uncoiled it and cut away the ear of the cheetah. Then storing it into his space belt, Duo Kang immediately ran off to help out the other brothers of the flame mercenaries. Jian Chen didn't hesitate at all as he immediately ran off to the next closest class for magical beast. This next one was a viper with 6 Saint Masters fighting against it. 2 of them were injured, leaving the remaining 4 to weave in and out in attempts to protect themselves. Each strike was getting harder to dodge and they were already in a miserable condition. The viper's poison that was spat out at them was enough to make all of the Saint Masters there afraid of coming into contact with it. So the 6 Saint Masters could only try to run away from the viper. Suddenly, a silver arc of light streaked by them and immediately pierced into the vitals of the viper before it could even respond. The viper immediately let out a miserable hiss as it collapsed down to the ground. Jian Chen's sword was incomparably fast, so even a class 4 magical beast like the viper wasn't able to perceive the attack at all. "Captain!" The 6 Saint Masters who were fighting the viper called out to Jian Chen straight away. Their eyes had a look of extreme joy in them as they immediately recognized that their captain had rescued them. "If you're injured, head on back to get yourself treated. The rest should go help our fellow brothers. Remember, help our own first and foremost." Dropping an order, Jian Chen immediately ran off to the next beast. With the introduction of Jian Chen to the battlefield, the pressure was significantly less now. In the span of a few breaths, Jian Chen had killed a good amount of the class 4 magical beasts. Each and every strike of his was unbelievably fast as he weaved in and out of the battlefield. Practically no Class 4 magical beast could dodge Jian Chen's sword, and so with each stab from his sword, another magical beast had its throat stabbed, dying before realizing what was happening. Following the series of Class 4 magical beasts dying in one strike, more and more people on the battlefield were quickly regaining the higher ground. Immediately, each group would run off to help another group fight off a Class 4 magical beast, causing the pressure on everyone to lessen dramatically. Jian Chen traveled forward and backward by himself toward the next closest Class 4 magical beast with his light wind sword continuously flashing with light from each stroke. Whenever a Class 2 or Class 3 magical beast got too close, they would be slaughtered ruthlessly. In Jian Chen's path of destruction, he had left behind a bloody trail. In the time it took to burn a single incense stick, 40 Class 4 magical beasts had died by Jian Chen's hand and countless more Class 2 and Class 3 magical beasts. In the beginning, Jian Chen's strength at the peak Saint Master level was enough to kill a Class 4 magical beast. Now that he was at the Great Saint Master despite being only at the primary level, his strength had been multiplied. Killing a Class 4 magical beast was now much easier than before and didn't require as much energy. That was because Jian Chen's best point was his speed. He was so fast that the magical beasts weren't fast enough to react, and in Jian Chen's eyes, these magical beasts might as well be standing still and would definitely be too slow to dodge. In the world of martial arts, only speed would not betray you. Jian Chen's sword relied heavily on this word, speed. The moment your speed surpassed your opponent's reaction time, then that opponent would be nothing more than a moving target awaiting for you to strike. Ho! Suddenly, an extremely loud roar could be heard from a snowy white bear around 2 meters tall and 4 meters wide emerged out of nowhere and slapped a Great Saint Master with its paw. Bang! Despite the Great Saint Master using his saint weapon to protect himself, the amount of force behind its giant paw was enough to send him flying through the air, blood spurting out from his mouth. At that moment, another nearby Great Saint Master instantly charged at the figure and slashed at its belly with his saint weapon. A thunder-like sound could be heard as the saint weapon stopped right on top of its fur without leaving a single scratch. Not only that, but the recoil the Great Saint Master felt from his blow was enough to send him staggering back 3 steps. The giant bear let out another roar as it moved to slap the Great Saint Master with its paw. All of a sudden, a silver light flew in between the bear and the Great Saint Master. Before the giant bear could even react, the silver light had immediately stabbed straight through its throat. However, the fur defenses of the giant beast was extraordinarily strong, as only the sharp tip of the sword could be stabbed into its throat. Sensing how the light wind sword had been stopped, Jian Chen's eyes flashed with surprise. What a strong defense! Without any further hesitation, a large amount of sword chi exploded from the tip of the sword and enlarged the wound. Immediately the giant bear let out a painful shriek as it then moved away from the Great Saint Master to slap at Jian Chen. Jian Chen pulled out his sword and increased the amount of sword chi radiating from it before stabbing at the bear's throat once more before it could attack him. The incredibly strong defenses that were there before suddenly disappeared into nothing as the light wind sword pushed through the fur, embedding itself deep within the bear's throat. However, the giant bear's paw didn't stop due to inertia and continued its path toward Jian Chen. Jian Chen's right arm clenched onto his sword as he twisted his sword in its throat before pulling it out. With an explosive leap, he flew backward to dodge the paw. Jian Chen didn't care anymore about the bear after that and immediately ran off to the next Class 4 magical beast. He had confidence in his last strike to land a fatal wound on the bear. His light wind sword had completely obliterated the major parts of the bear's throat with its sword chi. With a crucial blow like that, there was no way that the bear would be able to live. Not too long after Jian Chen had left, the giant bear's body finally fell to the ground with a large stream of blood flowing from its neck, forming a pool of blood. The second Great Saint Master looked at the bear's body with a pale face. Looking at its corpse, he turned to look at the other man who had been fighting it. Laz, did you kill this earthen bear? Jian Chen's death blow had been far too fast for the man to register, and when he had nearly been hit by the bear's paw, he hadn't seen Jian Chen make his move. The other great Saint Master looked at the body with an extremely shocked expression. How amazing, to kill an earthen bear in 2 strokes, could that man be an Earth Saint Master? Laz, you didn't tell me, how did you manage to kill the earthen bear? When did you get so strong? The great Saint Master repeated with curiosity. Hearing that, the one named Laz shook his head. This earthen bear was not killed by men but by a white-robed figure. With that, Laz's voice suddenly grew emotional as he clasped onto the other man's shoulders. Lai Dao, you didn't see it, that man's strength is truly profound. He had only needed to stab twice with a speed far beyond anything I've seen in order to kill this earthen bear with ease and no retaliation. It took 2 sword strikes to kill the class 4 earthen bear. Lai Dao cried out with shock. Laz, who is this person? Could he be an Earth Saint Master? That's what I believe as well. He was wearing white, but I don't know who he is. Laz muttered. Lai Dao looked around them only to find the white-robed Jian Chen, who had just stabbed another class 4 magical beast in the throat with his sword not too far away. Could it be that person? On the wall. This Jian Chen is quite strong. His fighting ability is somehow extremely strong to the point where even a class 4 magical beast is nothing to him. It only requires 1 strike for him to kill one. Katata looked at the group of magical beasts being killed by Jian Chen before exclaiming his thoughts out loud. What a fast sword! The soft-spoken Katafii said. Katata nodded his head. That's right, his sword is incredibly fast with no wasted movements. Each stroke lands firmly and at the weakest point of the magical beast's neck. Countless class 4 magical beasts were killed by Jian Chen's sword, and even I can only capture the hazy figure of his sword on the rare occasion. With a speed like that, it is no wonder a class 4 magical beast can't dodge it. However, what I don't understand is, just how did Jian Chen obtain such a fast sword play like this? Could it be the work of a battle skill? No, I can tell that this is no battle skill. Katafii spoke. It would seem that this Jian Chen's identity is quite mysterious. He has to be the young lord of a well-known clan, otherwise, how could his skill be so outstanding? A young man like him already has such a powerful strength and such a fast sword. Chapter 245, Despair. 3 Class 5 magical beasts. 2 hours later, 100 Class 4 magical beasts had been killed, and practically 99 of them were all killed by Jian Chen. With the Class 4 magical beasts dead, the great Saint Masters were now gaining the upper ground and were completely dominating the weaker-leveled magical beasts. Jian Chen didn't stop even for a moment. The Class 3 magical beasts were his new goal. Separating himself from the others, he immediately set about killing every Class 3 magical beast in sight. Soon enough, the surrounding environment around Jian Chen was filled with a small mountain of magical beasts that had been completely slaughtered by him. Within another crowd of magical beasts, Jian Chen constantly brandished and thrust his sword at an unbelievable speed while maintaining a style of movement that seemed as if he were dancing. Around him on the ground, magical beasts were falling one by one without realizing that they were dead. Their strength was only that of a Class 3 magical beast and were not able to even go up against Jian Chen's might. Almost as if he had eyes on the back of his head, Jian Chen could always quickly dodge out of the way from a sneak attack from behind. Even if he were surrounded, he was not afraid at all and instead began to reap the lives of the magical beasts like a god of death. Against Jian Chen, who seemed to be the embodiment of the god of death, these magical beasts were not afraid at all. Their bloodthirst was instead increasing their berserk nature, yet they did not run at Jian Chen just yet. Instead, each one began to roar out loud with a roar that seemed to reverberate across the horizon. Ho! Just then, another heaven-shaking roar emerged from the forest and shook even the ground everyone was standing on. The moment the magical beasts fighting near Wake City heard the angry roar, a look of fear entered their eyes, and they began to shake as if they were cold. Even the magical beasts that had saint weapons slashed into their bodies just stood there without retaliation, almost as if their terror had prevented them from making a move. Slowing down his slaughter of the magical beasts, Jian Chen pointed his sword at the ground at such an angle that all of the blood on it dripped off. He didn't understand just why the magical beasts were shivering with fear, but when he followed their gaze toward the magical beast mountain range, he suddenly understood. That was where the Class 5 magical beast was. Perhaps, if the magical beast was as strong as Cat Ada said it was, then even if the two strong envoys joined together, at the very most they would only be able to stall it. The forests began to shake for a moment before a 5-meter-tall magical beast walked out from it. This magical beast resembled an orangutan, but not quite. It had no fur on its body, instead, its entire body was covered with dark jade-colored scales like a viper. In the daylight, the scales radiated a brilliant glow. Ho! The ape-like magical beast walked on over from the forest slowly while snarling angrily. Its roar shook the heavens and deafened the ears of everyone around so that their eardrums were trembling from the vibrations. As for the magical beasts that had been fighting the mercenaries, each one of them suddenly turned around and crawled back toward the ape, ignoring the mercenaries. This is the green-scaled ape. Its strength is rumored to be unmatched and its green scales are unbelievably durable. Even an Earth Saint Master isn't able to break them with ease. Seeing the ape, Jian Chen couldn't help but cry out to himself as he felt the domineering pressure it was exhibiting. Cat Ada stood on top of the city wall with a hardened expression as he spoke. I didn't think that the Class 5 magical beast would be a green-scaled ape. Their defenses are abnormally strong and even a 4th cycle Earth Saint Master would be hard-pressed to deal with one. How troublesome. Katafiai called out right next to his brother. Ever since the beginning of the war, this was the first time Katafiai's face had a significantly different expression. Suddenly, another 2 figures came out from the forest and stood behind the green-scaled ape. These 2 figures belonged to a giant-sized magical beast. One was a tiger with a golden mane of fur that was 2 meters high and 5 meters tall. Next to the tiger was another magical beast that was a few dozen meters in length, however it was only as tall as half an adult human. This magical beast resembled that of a crocodile with black leather-like skin and eyes that seemed to reflect coldly with a deadly intent. Several 2-meter-long sword-like spikes were growing on its back, and as it walked into the light, its figure only seemed even more deadly. Upon seeing the 2 magical beasts, Katata's face grew deathly pale in fright as he cried out, "Golden Fur Tiger King and a Bladed Crocodile." This means there are 3 Class 5 magical beasts. Katafiai's face also grew white as he looked at the 3 magical beasts in front of him. He felt an extreme amount of dread now. He and his brother couldn't even fight against the green-scaled ape together, but with the introduction of the Golden Fur Tiger King and the Bladed Crocodile, it would be extremely difficult to fight against 3 Class 5 magical beasts at the same time. Cat Ada sucked in a deep breath as he tried to shake away the extremely cold feeling in his limbs. Immediately, he turned to Yunli. "Quickly, notify every commoner in Wake City, they must evacuate as soon as possible. Wake City is no longer safe." Yes, I will do that now." Yunli replied with an equally white face. 3 Class 5 magical beasts were not something Wake City could defend against. Even if a middle-tier magical crystal cannon was enough to injure them, Wake City would still need at least 5 Earth Saint Masters to improve their chances somewhat. "What do we do now?" Katafiai asked. "Right now we can only hope to stall for time by blocking them. Fight so that the commoners of Wake City will be able to evacuate. Although we are powerless to win, we can still stall for time. If we can do that, then those 3 Class 5 magical beasts will be hindered for just enough time. But we still need to be careful so we don't get injured, otherwise, I'm afraid we will become easy targets for the Class 5 magical beasts and most likely end up dead." Cat Ada spoke seriously. Katafiai nodded his head without saying a word. Within the crowd, Jian Chen realized that there were 2 more magical beasts standing behind the ape. The moment his eyes landed on the golden mane of the Golden Fur Tiger King, a bolt of electricity ran through him as if he remembered a flash from the past. It was in the past that this Golden Fur Tiger King had forced the Flame Mercenaries to flee. It was in the past that this golden fur tiger king had made the flame mercenaries have only one member left. It was in the past that this golden fur tiger king had killed Uncle Kendall and the rest of his brothers. The selfless Kendall, the outspoken Hoopa, and the ever so passionate Xiao Dao. The members of the flame mercenaries burned vividly within Jian Chen's mind like a wall scroll. The group had been a happy family for a short moment, but then, everything had changed when the golden fur tiger king attacked. Even though the flame mercenaries still exist, everything was different now. This past memory had been forever burned into Jian Chen's mind so that he would never forget it. The brothers that had passed away long ago would never return. Their familiar spirits had long since disappeared into the boundless heavens and had left behind only a sorrowful memory. A fierce killing intent flowed out from Jian Chen's eyes as his light wind sword exploded with sword qi. A fierce light shined from the tip of the sword, and if one looked closely enough, there was a hint of azure and violet shining in it. Chapter 246, Class 5 Magical Beast, One Sword to Strike the Head. Jian Chen felt no fear in his heart against these 3 Class 5 magical beasts, instead he felt only hatred. The 3 magical beasts stood still with their presence overwhelming the senses of everyone else around while causing the other magical beasts to shiver with fright. Even the mercenaries who had just been fighting them felt a cold feeling of dread within their hearts and a stone-like pressure pressing down on them. What is that? At last, someone spoke referring to the 3 magical beasts. It's too late, I can't see a good ending from here, a green-scaled ape. How could it be? Not good, that's a Class 5 magical beast. Only a Class 5 magical beast would be able to emit such a pressure like this, so those 3 are Class 5 magical beasts? Heavens, how could there be 3 of them? Retreat. No one can withstand a Class 5 magical beast. Not too many mercenaries had seen a Class 5 magical beast before, but the ones that did instantly grew fearful and cried out at the sight of them. With 3 Class 5 magical beasts standing right in front of them, they all grew white with fright. Throwing down their helmets, they began to flee back toward Wake City. Even the great Saint Masters who had known about the Class 5 magical beast already had their faces pale with fright. Although they had foreknowledge of there being an Earth Saint Master expert helping them, the situation was different now. There was 3 Class 5 magical beasts, even the experts from Monarch City would not be enough to deal with them. Retreat! Everyone retreat! Immediately the mercenaries all cried out the signal to retreat. Straight after, the city gates to Wake City had nearly 200,000 mercenaries and soldiers trying to make their way inside in order to escape from the battlefield. Don't panic everyone, the Class 5 magical beast will be dealt with by us. All of a sudden, a booming voice called out from nowhere as 2 red streaks of light flew down from the walls like a shooting star toward the Class 5 magical beasts. Both the Earth Saint Masters Katata and Katafii had finally made a move. Although they had wanted to wait a little longer to engage to buy some time, but with the panic happening below, they couldn't hesitate any longer. If the entire fighting force were to retreat into the city, then not only would the entire city be in chaos, but it would also make the city easier to invade. Katata and Katafii were surrounded by a layer of fire like Saint Force as they flew through the sky. It took them another 50 meters before finally dropping to the ground, but still surrounded with the fire like Saint Force, they charged straight toward the Class 5 magical beasts. Fire Saint Force. That type of fire-like essence, that's something only an Earth Saint Master with a profound mastery of the Fire Saint Force can accomplish. Earth Saint Master, so there were experts like that here? To think that there would be an Earth Saint Master here. Damn it all, who gives 2 fucks about a Class 5 magical beast then? We have 2 Earth Saint Master experts on our sides. Brothers, forward. Kill those bastards and take revenge for our dead. Upon seeing the layer of fire surrounding Katata and Katafii, many of the mercenaries were overjoyed and shouted out in disbelief. Their presence was almost like a tranquilizer to the men who had been frightened at the sight of those Class 5 magical beasts. Only a small amount of the mercenaries still had a look of worry on their faces. Magical beasts had an innate superiority compared to humanity. If there were 3 Class 5 magical beasts, then what could 2 Earth Saint Masters do? Let me handle the Golden Fur Tiger King. Jian Chen exclaimed as he flew toward the 2 brothers with no hesitation. His light wind sword was ready at his side as he flew at the 3 Class 5 magical beasts with blinding speed. Almost as if he were gliding across the ground, Jian Chen had instantly cut apart any magical beasts in his way with the azure and violet glows from his sword, making his path all but unhindered. At this moment, the azure and violet glow on the light wind sword made it seem like a sharp spear that was capable of destroying any defense and killing anything. Even the countless waves of magical beasts were utterly incapable of stopping Jian Chen for even a moment. It was almost as if Jian Chen was a godlike being right now, with power that was unmatched by anything. Even more so, it was like he could kill with just a lift of his finger and will. Katata and his brother had already been close enough to the Class 5 magical beasts with their Fire Saint force surrounding their bodies to begin attacking. With each strike they made, the 3 Class 5 magical beasts retaliated. Their battles had already deformed the area around them beyond recognition. Their fighting energy had been splashed about in ripples of energy that flew everywhere and shook the earth. With each attack the energy grew bigger and bigger in intensity. Ho! The green-scaled ape roared angrily as a human's chest-sized fist came gleaming down with a green color onto Katata with a terrifying amount of force. Katata threw himself out of the way in order to dodge the fist. With a loud bang, the fist landed on the ground where Katata had just been. A large amount of energy rippled across the ground, and when the fist was lifted, there was a 3-meter deep and 5-meter long crater below. On one side, the bladed crocodile spat out a gray-colored ball of energy toward Katafii while simultaneously readying its bladed spine. Leveling it horizontally to the ground, the spine suddenly flew at Katafii with blinding speed. A glimpse of golden fur could be seen as the Golden Fur Tiger King let out an ear-piercing roar. Its claws, which were strong enough to shatter rock and split metal, flashed dangerously as they swiped at Katafii while a foul smell of blood could be smelled as it also tried to bite him. Katafii and Katata didn't dare defend head-on with any of the strikes from the 3 Class 5 magical beasts. The both of them knew that they were definitely not an opponent for any of the 3 magical beasts, and so it was not possible for them to win at all if they tried to go head-to-head. It would also consume their Saint force rapidly and make escaping difficult. All they wanted to do was stall for time and gather the attention of the magical beasts. It was at this moment that Jian Chen had finally arrived with his eyes burning with a furious anger. Staring at the golden mane of the Golden Fur Tiger King, his light wind sword began to increase with respect to the luster of the azure and violet glow, but the presence of the sword spirits had not yet been revealed. No one would have expected to see that the azure and violet glows on Jian Chen's sword contained a terrifying amount of power. Disappearing in a blur, Jian Chen flew at the Golden Fur Tiger King who was in the midst of attacking Katafii. His eyes locked onto the throat of the Golden Fur Tiger King and his light wind sword blazed with the azure and violet light as it flew toward the magical beast. Although it had sensed Jian Chen's attack, the Class 5 magical beast had some innate knowledge that told it that Jian Chen was only at the Great Saint Master level. To the Golden Fur Tiger King, Jian Chen was nothing more than an ant, so it didn't care for him. The tail behind casually flicked out to strike at Jian Chen with a speed that whistled through the air. The power in the tail was incredibly large, and even against a Great Saint Master, the Saint weapon would surely break apart if it was hit by this tail. Suddenly, the tail of the Golden Fur Tiger King made contact with the layer of azure and violet glow of light and was effortlessly cut in two. However, the part that had been cut off resumed its trajectory path due to inertia and hit Jian Chen in the arm, which consequently forced Jian Chen's sword arm to aim down from the tiger's neck. Ho! The Golden Fur Tiger King let out an ear-splitting shriek of pain to the point where both the envoys and Jian Chen thought their eardrums would shatter. It's just like last time. Seeing how tall the Golden Fur Tiger King was right in front of him, Jian Chen's eyes flashed dangerously as he tried to change the trajectory to its original path. The light wind sword speared into the Golden Fur Tiger King's neck, causing the tiger to roar out miserably once more. Immediately, the head of the golden fur tiger king spun through the air leaking blood. At the same time, a fountain of blood splurted from its beheaded corpse 2 meters high into the air before falling back down to the earth. The Class 5 golden fur tiger king had been beheaded in a single strike. Chapter 247, Punishing the Bladed Crocodile. The golden fur tiger king's head spun through the air, raining blood down from the sky while the body below slowly crashed to the ground. The neck of the tiger began to pour blood in such large quantities that it filled the area around it. Katata and Katafii stared at the spinning head of the tiger in such shock that they had forgotten that they were in the midst of battle. All they could do was stare in absolute disbelief as their eyes continued to widen. The Class 5 golden fur tiger king was something that neither of the two brothers would be able to kill by themselves. To think that Jian Chen had simply cut off its head with ease, this was too much of a shock for their hearts to handle. Even the green-scaled ape and the bladed crocodile stopped their actions mid-flight and turned to look at the severed head of the golden fur tiger king with eyes that betrayed their shock. Not even waiting for the head of the golden fur tiger king to fall to the ground, Jian Chen immediately landed near the bladed crocodile. While the magical beast was still stunned, the enhanced light wind sword immediately flew toward its skull. Sensing the incoming danger, the bladed crocodile immediately snapped out of its confusion and swung its 7-bladed spine at Jian Chen. A large ear-piercing sound could be heard as the spine whistled toward Jian Chen's sword while simultaneously tilting its head to the side faster than Jian Chen's movement. A layer of earth began to cover its head, resembling the color and sheen of steel armor, protecting its head. Ding! A single blade on the spine struck against the light wind sword with a crisp sound as a jolting shock was transmitted up into Jian Chen's arm. The light wind sword had almost been knocked out of Jian Chen's arm, but he managed to keep hold. The bladed spine, on the other hand, even though it was a brief moment of contact between the blade and the azure and violet light on the sword managed to leave a small crack on one of the blades. PCH. A few of the blades flew past Jian Chen's sword, one of them had even managed to burrow its way into Jian Chen's chest before protruding out of his back. In an instant, Jian Chen's face had become deathly pale as blood splurted out from his mouth. The blade had carried about a tremendous amount of power, and so when it had stabbed into him, the force was almost as if a wild horse had rammed against him, causing significant damage to his body. Because of Jian Chen's cultivation method, his inner organs were stronger than usual. Trying his best to ignore the blossoming pain in his chest, he bit his lip and slammed down into the bladed crocodile with his sword. The bladed crocodile flew back and spat out a large ball of energy at Jian Chen. Thanks to the innate knowledge it had, it immediately sensed that Jian Chen's sword was not to be met head-on with after seeing what had happened with the golden fur tiger king. "Help me distract it." Seeing the bladed crocodile retreat, Jian Chen cried out loudly. At the same time, he moved to dodge the ball of energy before flying at the bladed crocodile. A figure came into view as Katafii flew into Jian Chen's line of sight. Enwrapping his saint weapon with the fire-like essence that was his saint force, he sliced down into the ball of energy. Bang! The ball of energy that had been spat out from the bladed crocodile had been cut in half by Katafii's sword. The massive amount of energy from the ball immediately dispersed into the air before kicking up the dust from the ground and obscuring Katafii, Jian Chen, and the bladed crocodile from view. Katafii filled the air around him with the light from his fire-like essence as he moved forward at an extremely fast pace. Despite the dust completely obstructing his visibility, it did not restrict his movements. The flame-like light would flicker brightly at times. When Katafii swung his sword with his entire might, the dust around his sword seemed to have evaporated because of his fire saint force. As the dust cleared away, Jian Chen could only see Katafii send the bladed crocodile's body into the air. Its body was so big that it managed to cover a large part of the sky while its bodily defenses had been split in two with blood pouring out. Flickering away from sight, Jian Chen quickly soared into the air. Before the bladed crocodile could even fall back down to the ground, Jian Chen's light wind sword gleamed with an azure and violet light as he stabbed at its skull at an incredibly fast rate. The audience could only see the bladed crocodile fly through the air with its blood spilling in the air, and then Jian Chen came out of nowhere and rendered its head into ground meat. With the azure and violet glows, the bladed crocodile's defenses had been nothing more than tofu, and it had instantly folded against the light wind sword. The gigantic body of the bladed crocodile finally fell to the ground without moving. Its own head had been split apart into multiple pieces as blood and brain matter began to spill out from the various sword wounds on its head. Bang! Not too far away, Katata had been hit by the green-scaled ape, causing him to be sent flying backward like a speeding bullet through the air while spitting out blood. The green-scaled ape turned to look at the splattered bladed crocodile with an ominous glint in its eyes. Turning its head to the sky, it let out a roar of sorrow before grabbing a 30-meter-long tree to swing at Jian Chen. Jian Chen didn't bother to move. Instead, the light wind sword enshrouded the area with a bright glow of light before instantly shaving away the tree into wood shavings. Immediately, Jian Chen flew at the green-scaled ape with his light wind sword aimed at its throat. Howling angrily, the green-scaled ape lashed out with its foot to kick Jian Chen away. Ugh! Jian Chen spat out another mouthful of blood as he was sent flying back due to the kick. His face paled in color as he got up from the ground 30 meters away from his initial position. His chest had sunken in on itself in a terrifying way thanks to the absolutely inconceivably strong amount of force behind the ape's kick. Even the bones within his body had been crushed and his inner organs had suffered significant damage as well. The green-scaled ape stared at Jian Chen with a death glare before charging straight for him. With each step, the floor trembled with shock to signify just how strong this beast was. At this moment, an intense amount of sword chi with a flame-like essence flew at the green-scaled ape. Right behind the sword chi was Katafei with his sword. Without even looking at the red sword chi, the green-scaled ape swatted away the flame-like sword chi and forced it to dissipate into nothingness. Because of how Jian Chen had killed 2 Class 5 magical beasts almost by himself, the green-scaled ape was forced to focus on him the most. Katafei's face hardened as he looked on from far away. Seeing how Jian Chen was struggling to get up, his face paled as he realized the green-scaled ape would reach him in no time. Katafei, the strength of the green-scaled ape should be that of a 5th cycle Earth Saint Master. Its strength is too massive to go head-to-head, so just try to stall for time. Katata's weak-sounding voice called out. Chapter 248, heavily injuring the ape. A surge of fire saint force rippled out from Katafei's body as it formed a faint shield around him, making it seem as if the god of fire had just descended. The green-scaled ape still paid no attention to Katafei. Both of its eyes were focused on Jian Chen with a bloodthirsty and malicious glare as if it had a deep grudge against him. Wincing from the pain in his chest, Jian Chen staggered up from the ground. The bones in his chest had already fractured and some pieces had even started to stab into his inner flesh, causing him to feel so much pain that a thick blanket of sweat could be seen on his forehead. Watching the green-scaled ape come running at him, Jian Chen's face grew solemn. He knew that the 3 Class 5 magical beasts were on friendly terms with each other, so when he had killed 2 of the 3, the green-scaled ape would definitely come running at him. Upon seeing how the green-scaled ape had essentially ignored him, Katafei growled under his breath as another explosion of fire essence came out from him before forming a 3-meter-long blade. Cloudfire Blade. With a loud shout, the floating red blade above his head immediately flew through the air like a shooting star with the green-scaled ape as its destination. It was then that the green-scaled ape finally halted its movement. Snarling angrily, it raised a fist to smash apart the Cloudfire Blade. Straight away, the Cloudfire Blade was smashed into pieces from the ape's fist. The energy splashed all over the area and filled the sky with its heat before incinerating any nearby plant life into ashes. Upon the disappearance of the flame, Katafei's body fell from the sky like a kite without a string. His body fell 20 meters from the sky before finally crashing down to the ground with an extremely pale face. The green-scaled ape's body shook slightly as it looked at the wound on its fist. The scales on that part of the fist had been obliterated and a green liquid began to drip down slowly from its fist to the ground. Ho! Roaring angrily once more, it raised a fist to strike at the grounded Katafei. With this, it had finally changed targets from Jian Chen to Katafei and moved closer to him. An injury by Katafei would not be excused by the ape. Cloudfire Blade. Just as the green-scaled ape was completely focused on Katafei, Katata suddenly rose up into the air and slashed at the green-scaled ape with another Cloudfire Blade. As soon as the Cloudfire Blade made contact, the green-scaled ape's shoulder immediately began to bleed. What a strong defense! Katata cried out. The defense of the green-scaled ape was far beyond what he had expected. To think that even after using his entire strength, there would only be a small amount of damage. Suddenly a large palm came toward Katata to smack him down. Borrowing the body of the green-scaled ape, Katata kicked off from the ape in order to dodge the strike. With bloodthirsty eyes, the green-scaled ape swung toward Katata with an arm ready to strike Katata down from the air once more. Katata's face changed immediately. Since he was in midair, he had no way of moving, and so with the green-scaled ape's fist, there was no way of dodging it. Katata let out a loud shout as a large amount of fire saint force exploded from his body. In an instant it covered his entire body before using his saint weapon to slash at the green-scaled ape's fist. The green-scaled ape wasn't afraid and the fist continued to move in a fluid motion to swat Katata. A layer of green scales immediately came close to hitting him. Katata's sword was knocked aside from the force of the green-scaled ape's fist before landing fiercely onto his body. With a bone-breaking sound, Katata's body was sent flying with blood coming out from his mouth. At the same time, Jian Chen resisted the great feeling of pain within his chest and soared toward the ape. With the light wind sword flashing dangerously, he stabbed at the throat of the green-scaled ape. The green-scaled ape suddenly turned its head to look straight Jian Chen. Despite the sword coming at it, he didn't move to dodge the sword and instead lifted a giant hand to swat at Jian Chen. The ape had complete confidence in its defenses. If two Earth Saint Masters weren't able to cause any major sort of damage on it, then a great Saint Master like Jian Chen wouldn't even land a scratch. PCH. For a brief moment, the light wind sword was stopped by the defensive scales on the ape's neck. Then, the azure and violet glows on the light wind sword instantly cut through the scales like a hot knife through butter and the blade was inserted deep within its throat. Pa! Almost at the same time, the green-scaled ape's palm slammed against Jian Chen's chest with an unbelievable amount of force, causing some of his inner organs to rupture. Flying away from the fist, Jian Chen began to vomit blood as he felt excruciating pain in his body. Ho! After a fatal blow to the throat, the green-scaled ape cried out angrily toward the heavens, causing the group of magical beasts around it to shiver in extreme fear. From far away, the mercenaries all stopped what they were doing and slowly turned to look at the green-scaled ape. Each one of them knew that whether Wake City could be saved or even if they could survive, depended on this one battle. Not only was this battle determining Wake City's future, but also whether or not the entire group of humans there would live or die. Green liquid slowly dripped down from the throat of the green-scaled ape in an endless stream. Despite it slowly losing its life, its eyes carried a malicious and dangerous glare as it strode toward Jian Chen. At that moment, another two streaks of red light flashed as Katata and Katafei charged toward the green-scaled ape. The both of them knew what had to be done. With the Golden Fur Tiger King and Bladed Crocodile dead, the two of them could do what they had initially planned on, killing the Class 5 magical beast. Brother Jian Chen, while we stall the green-scaled ape, find an opportunity to kill the beast. Katata cried out from his position. Despite the two of them suffering from heavy wounds themselves, they could both manage to stall for time if they worked together. Furthermore, the green-scaled ape itself had suffered serious wounds on its neck. Despite it not dying straight away, its strength would surely be less than before. Katafei and Katata continued to fight the green-scaled ape and were periodically sent flying backwards at least 3 times. The two of them were suffering from grave wounds, but finally, Jian Chen had found an opportunity and with one final leap toward the green-scaled ape, he slammed his sword into its head with sword qi enforcing it for a stronger effect. The green-scaled ape's gigantic body began to shake slowly. With a tiny wobble, it finally came crashing down to the ground. As for Jian Chen, with no more energy left in his body, he fell to the ground unconscious as well. Chapter 249, Radiant Saint Masterclass. Some time after, Jian Chen had finally woke up. Realizing that he was sleeping in a soft bed, he surveyed the area around him only to discover that he was in a grandly decorated room. A young teenage woman sat sleepily on a stool. Taking a moment to inspect his wounds, Jian Chen realized that his inner body was in serious condition. There was a walnut-sized hole from when the bladed crocodile stabbed through his chest with its bladed spine, and the bones in his chest had almost been reduced to powder thanks to the green-scaled ape. Even his inner organs were severely affected as some of them were starting to tear. Jian Chen slowly took a deep breath. With such serious wounds, it would take several dozen days to heal himself even with the highest quality medicine. Right now, he didn't wish to divulge the fact that he could control the Radiant Saint force. That meant that there was nothing he could do. Ah! You've awakened. The sleepy-looking girl suddenly realized Jian Chen had woken and cried out in happiness. Immediately before Jian Chen could say anything, she continued to say, "My lord, please wait while I inform the master." With that, the weariness on her face instantly disappeared as she ran out the door. Quickly, the sound of footsteps could be heard as Yun Li and Commander Duo Li immediately came pacing in. "Ha, brother Jian Chen, you've woken up quite fast. This was far beyond my expectation. Both of the senior envoys told me that you would wake up in 2 or 3 days, but it hasn't even been half a day since that." Yun Li laughed. Seeing Yun Li enter, Jian Chen realized that he had to be in the Lord's mansion. "Brother Jian Chen, this time we were able to defend Wake City from the magical beast wave all thanks to you." Yun Li spoke emotionally. Seeing Yun Li and Commander Duo Li's relaxed faces, Jian Chen couldn't but ask, "Lord Yun Li, what is the situation looking like in Wake City?" "Ha, brother Jian Chen, after the 3 Class 5 magical beasts were ultimately killed, the other magical beasts all lost their will to fight and ran straight back to the magical beast mountain range. Wake City is safe now." Yun Li boomed with laughter as a cheerful smile appeared on his face. Hearing that, Jian Chen immediately let out a sigh in relief. This type of result was the best type. Even though 3 Class 5 magical beasts had appeared, the amount of casualties this time around is at the lowest it has ever been since the foundation of Wake City. Yun Li reported. "Brother Jian Chen, right now you should just rest up in bed. We've already hired a few Saint Masters from the other cities to help heal you and the 2 senior envoys, so there is no need to rush." Jian Chen nodded his head without saying a word. With a Radiant Saint Master here to heal his wounds, his injuries would definitely be healed faster than he thought. Yun Li didn't say anything more than that and immediately left the room. Right now, since Wake City had just gone through a big battle, there were still things that must be done. On the second day, Yun Li had brought a white-robed man into the room where Jian Chen was. "Brother Jian Chen, the Radiant Saint Master has arrived, please let him heal your wounds. This way, your wounds will heal at the fastest rate possible." Yun Li spoke. The recuperating Jian Chen slowly opened his eyes to inspect the Radiant Saint Master. The person looked to be 30 years old and wore a white robe that covered his rather frail frame. Behind him were 2 sturdy-looking men that appeared to have the strength of great Saint Masters. The way they stood behind the Radiant Saint Master made it seem as if they were his bodyguards. "Honored Radiant Saint Master, this man here is Brother Jian Chen." Yun Li spoke courteously toward the Radiant Saint Master. A Radiant Saint Master had the ability to wield a unique energy that in turn made their position within the Tian Yuan continent rather majestic. Even a lower-leveled Radiant Saint Master had the same ranking as an Earth Saint Master. The white-robed Radiant Saint Master looked at Jian Chen with a small smile. "So you're Sire Jian Chen." "That is me, Honored Radiant Saint Master. Following Yun Li's example, Jian Chen spoke to the Radiant Saint Master with a respectful tone. I've heard rumors that Sire Jian Chen killed 3 Class 5 magical beasts. With Sire Jian Chen's age being this young while having such strength, this is truly quite a shocking achievement. The Radiant Saint Master smiled. Honored Radiant Saint Master, I can only assume you've heard half of the rumors. Could it be that you didn't hear about the 2 envoys of the Earth Saint Master level? Jian Chen spoke softly. The Radiant Saint Master could only smile without a single word. Both of the healer's hands slowly closed in between his eyes before a brilliant glow appeared from within his hands, finally revealing a milky white-colored ball. With the milky color growing to such a rich glow, the Radiant Saint Master slowly pressed it into Jian Chen's chest. Immediately the ball of Radiant Saint Force disappeared into his chest and quickly began to heal his wounds. Slowly furrowing his eyebrows, Jian Chen could sense that the Radiant Saint Master's control over the Radiant Saint Force was not as fine as his. When Jian Chen controlled it, he did so at a faster speed and his ball of Saint Force was even richer in concentration. His would definitely not look as simple and weak-looking as this Radiant Saint Master's did, and he would probably require only 6 hours to heal by himself. By having the Radiant Saint Master heal him, it would take at least 14 hours. Could this Radiant Saint Master be deliberately trying to slow the process? Or is his ability quite limited? Jian Chen muttered to himself in secret. At this moment, he couldn't help but wonder, could his ability to control the Radiant Saint Force be higher than that of this Radiant Saint Master? An hour later, the light on Jian Chen's chest began to slowly dissipate. Exhausted, the Radiant Saint Master withdrew his hands, and spoke, Sire Jian Chen, your internal injuries are quite serious. At the moment I can't completely treat you in a single treatment. I will require more time. With that, the Radiant Saint Master sat down in a cross-legged position some distance away and began to recover his used-up spirit. The other 2 men then silently stood by him in order to protect him. It would seem this Radiant Saint Master's ability is not on the same level as mine. After just an hour, he wasn't able to persevere anymore. Jian Chen muttered. In a flash, 2 days had passed with Jian Chen being slowly healed by the milky white glow of the Radiant Saint Force. The Radiant Saint Master held his hands over Jian Chen's chest with exhaustion. All right, Sire Jian Chen, your internal injuries are all healed up now. The Radiant Saint Master smiled. Immediately rising from the bed, Jian Chen began to stretch his limbs. Honored Radiant Saint Master, your ability is really too profound. What would have taken me many days to recover from has only taken 2 days. This was all because of your treatment. Hearing that, the Radiant Saint Master had a proud look on his face before speaking modestly, unfortunately, my ability is still quite lacking. If it were a high-leveled Radiant Saint Master, then this type of injury would have taken just half a day to heal. Jian Chen's heart pounded as he heard that, Honored Radiant Saint Master, are even Radiant Saint Masters ranked? Naturally. The Radiant Saint Master nodded. Like the fighters, even Radiant Saint Masters are ranked. A low-leveled Radiant Saint Master is only able to heal small injuries and not major ones. A high-leveled Radiant Saint Master can regrow limbs, and some can even bring someone back from the brink of death or even past. Then do these Radiant Saint Masters have categories of strength? Jian Chen continued to ask, intrigued. The healer laughed. Radiant Saint Masters are categorized into 9 different layers like the fighting saints, but there isn't such a naming convention like yours. The lowest rank is the 1st class Radiant Saint Master and the highest rank is the 9th class Radiant Saint Master. Because a Radiant Saint Master relies on their spirit force, it becomes harder to improve the further one goes. As far as I know, the highest leveled Radiant Saint Master within the Tian Yuan continent is only at the 6th class. Anyone beyond that level has only been spoken of in legends. Then Honored Radiant Saint Master is at which level? A Radiant Saint Master's cultivation is much more difficult than the fighting class saints. You are able to use monster cores to improve yourself, but us Radiant Saint Masters can only rely on ourselves to improve our spirit to strengthen our bodies. So currently, even though I have been cultivating for 30 years, I am only at the 3rd class Radiant Saint Master level. With that explanation, Jian Chen had a much more detailed understanding of how the Radiant Saint Masters operated. Judging from the man's strength, Jian Chen could only guess that his own ability had to be that of the 4th class or higher. The man didn't stay in the room for too long after that. Quickly, he had gone to prepare himself to heal the 2 envoys. After his full recovery, Jian Chen decided to leave the mansion despite Yun Li's cordial wishes. On the streets, many of the mercenaries were walking with an excited look on their faces while talking about the Class 5 magical beasts. This time, there had been 3 of them unexpectedly, so that bit of information had garnered plenty of interest. I've heard that 2 envoys with the power of an Earth Saint Master class came to our Wake City. Those 2 envoys definitely killed the 3 Class 5 magical beasts, that can't be for certain. I saw 3 people fighting the Class 5 magical beasts. One of them was even a youth around the age of 20. Those 3 Class 5 magical beasts were killed by this youth alone. I definitely saw this with my own eyes, Bull. Your eyes must have grown old. How could a youth kill 3 Class 5 magical beasts? That is unbelievable. You all must not believe that. I dare say that those 3 Class 5 magical beasts were killed by the 2 envoys. Aside from an envoy, our Wake City has no one that could possibly face off against a Class 5 magical beast. What utter crap. I personally saw a youth soar up against the green-scaled ape before using his sword to stab into its head. The cacophony on the streets grew louder and louder as everyone continued to talk about the topic of the Class 5 magical beasts. Upon hearing this chat, Jian Chen couldn't help but laugh as he walked toward the Kai clan's compound. Chapter 250, in possession of another 2 Class 5 monster cores. Upon arriving at the Kai clan compound, Jian Chen walked past the gates unhindered as the guards respectfully called out to him. Jian Chen continued to walk toward where the flame mercenaries were. Very few people were moving about, and not too far away, the sounds of pain and suffering could be heard loudly. Captain! Captain! The moment they saw Jian Chen walk in, many of the Flame Mercenaries members scrambled to greet him with a greater tone of respect than before. During the magical beast wave, Jian Chen had killed many of the Class 4 magical beasts that were close to killing them, thus saving the lives of many of the Flame Mercenaries members while taking revenge for those who were dead. Captain, you've returned. Qing Feng, Mo Tian, Charcus, Duo Kong and Seth all immediately came from within the courtyard to greet Jian Chen. Each one of them had a few wounds on their bodies, and the bandages wound around their wounds still had blood staining through them. Slowly as everyone came to greet him, Jian Chen couldn't help but sigh in relief as he saw no serious wounds on the 5 great Saint Masters. These 5 were the pillars of the Flame Mercenaries, and the goal of almost every member in there. He definitely did not wish to lose any of them. How are the casualties? Jian Chen asked the 5. The casualties aren't as heavy as expected. In total 20 of our brothers have lost their lives, 8 of them were Saint Masters. 60 more of our brothers are injured to a lesser degree as well. A man reported. That's not as bad as expected, that's good. Jian Chen relaxed before opening up his space belt. Here are 1,000 purple coins, go buy the medicine needed to heal our brothers and give the rest of the money to the families of the deceased. We thank the captain. With Jian Chen's actions, both the 5 great Saint Masters and the rest of the members were moved. Immediately, their faces all lit up with emotions as they thanked him. Within the mercenaries, while there were many people that were orphans, there were just as many of them with elderly parents or a wife and children. Many of them had risked their lives on the Tianyuan continent in order to improve themselves and make a living to support their families. They were the backbone of their families and the only source of income. With one's death, that meant their family would have no way of making a living and be forced to live an arduous life. Jian Chen's actions caused everyone there to be moved emotionally. With this, many of the mercenaries decided for good that they would follow Jian Chen in the future. It could be said that this action of Jian Chen had purchased everyone's affection. 2 days later, Yunli and 2 guards arrived at the Kai clan before walking into the small courtyard where Jianchen was. Brother Jianchen. After preparing for the past 2 days, the monster cores from the magical beast wave have all been gathered. In accordance to your contributions, the items in this space belt are for you. With that, Yunli handed a space belt to Jianchen. Looking inside the space belt, Jianchen saw a large pile of monster cores. There were plenty of Class 4 monster cores, but what had amazed Jianchen the most was that there were 2 Class 5 monster cores. There are a total of 400 Class 3 monster cores, 100 Class 4 monster cores, and 2 Class 5 monster cores. Yunli explained after handing it to him. Lord, surely the distribution of the monster cores is too much for me. A quarter of the monster cores here are of the Class 4 level, and there are even 2 Class 5 monster cores. This type of distribution will surely make many people bitter. It's also only reasonable to say that these 2 Class 5 monster cores should be given to the 2 senior envoys. Despite being tempted by the 2 Class 5 monster cores, Jianchen knew that there were only 3 of them. If a single person were to get 2 of them, then the 2 envoys would definitely not feel satisfied by such a decision. Class 5 monster cores were rare treasures, and Jianchen had no desire to offend 2 Earth Saint Masters. Brother Jianchen, this type of distribution is already unfair to you as it is. You've contributed so much to the magical beast wave efforts. Even if you were to collect half of the total Class 4 monster cores, no one would complain because aside from the Class 4 magical beasts killed by the magical crystal cannons, the rest of them had been entirely killed by Brother Jianchen. Because of your actions in dealing with them, many of our brothers were saved. And for the Class 5 monster cores, this was what the senior envoys had both wanted. Yunli explained. Brother Jianchen. These monster cores belong to you, so don't try to get out of it and just accept them. As soon as his laugh ended, the 2 white-robed Cat-Ada and Katafii swiftly entered, with Cat-Ada speaking out kindly. In the time span of the past 2 days, Cat-Ada and Katafii had quickly healed thanks to the Radiant Saint Master and their own healing ability. Brother Jianchen. Even though you have 2 Class 5 monster cores, we feel that this is still too little. After all 3 of the Class 5 magical beasts were killed by your hand. If it were not for you, then the both of us would not have been able to kill any of the Class 5 magical beasts and would only have been able to run away. Even with just 1 Class 5 monster core, that is by itself a tremendous profit already. Cat-Ada spoke with a gentle laugh and a kind smile. Then if senior envoys both agreed to this, then I will accept it. Jianchen smiled. Even Jianchen wanted the Class 5 monster cores because of their overwhelming superiority over Class 4 monster cores. There was a huge qualitative and quantitative gap between the two as 1 Class 5 rivaled at the very least 10 Class 4 monster cores. Brother Jianchen, I've also consented to give all 3 Class 5 magical beasts' corpses to you. I don't know how you plan to deal with them, whether it be sending them to the auction house or for your own personal usage. Cat-Ada laughed. Jianchen's eyes sparked dangerously as he said, I will take the Golden Fur Tiger King. As for the green-scaled ape's corpse, the envoys can have it. After all, if it were not for the chance given to me by the envoys, I would not have been able to kill the green-scaled ape. Hearing that, Cat-Ada and Katafii both had happy looks on their faces. Then we will happily take the green-scaled ape's body. With that, Cat-Ada didn't try to avoid taking the corpse. The corpse of the green-scaled ape was something that he desired, and had originally planned on buying the corpse from Jianchen with money. However, now that Jianchen had unexpectedly given him the corpse, then he would gladly accept it. From the 3 corpses, the green-scaled ape was the highest quality one since it was at the very least a 5th cycle Class 5 magical beast. This level of power was stronger than both Cat-Ada and Katafii, so the price would definitely be higher than that of the Golden Fur Tiger King and the Bladed Crocodile. Afterward, Jianchen and Cat-Ada began to talk to each other. There was a huge kind smile on Cat-Ada's face that would allow anyone to feel at ease when talking to him. Katafii, on the other hand, had the expression of a bored Sitting by the side with a blank face, he was almost like a statue and did not say a single word. Brother Jian Chen, tomorrow Katafiai and I will leave Wake City to return to our Tianlong city. Should you come by our Tianlong city, then you should go to the Lord's mansion to find us. Should you also come across any trouble there, be sure to tell them our name. I believe no one would dare find trouble with you after that. After the battle, Cat Ada had a favorable impression of Jian Chen's strength. He had killed multiple Class 4 magical beasts like ants and killed the Class 5 Golden Fur Tiger King with a single sword strike to the head. Then, with another strike, the bladed crocodile had its head shattered and rendered. Anyone that had witnessed the fight would have been speechless. Even as Earth Saint Masters, Cat Ada and Katafiai didn't dare to try and be arrogant around Jian Chen, and so they treated him as an equal and tried to strike a courteous relationship with him. Definitely. If I ever come across trouble, I will remember your words. Jian Chen smiled respectfully with gratitude. Quickly, Cat Ada and Katafiai both left the courtyard, leaving only Yunli and Jian Chen behind. Brother Jian Chen, might you have any other questions for me? Yunli asked politely. Lord Yunli, this one has one thing I hope you can help me with. Might you assist in finding some people for me? Jian Chen immediately got straight to business. No problem. I don't know who Brother Jian Chen wishes to find, but as long as they are within Wake City, then I will overturn the entire city to find them. Yunli laughed. Afterward, Jian Chen supplied Kendall and the other dead members' name and appearance to Yunli before saying, Lord Yunli, would you be able to find their families for me? Yunli furrowed his eyebrows. Brother Jian Chen, this amount of information is too little. To try and find them from this information may be difficult, but don't worry. This matter is something I will personally oversee and search the entire city. Whether it is possible or not, I will find out. As long as they are in Wake City, then I will definitely do something. Jian Chen nodded his head silently. Right now, I only wish that they are in Wake City. Otherwise, with the continent being so vast, where would I go to find them? It is a shame that Uncle Kendall's quick death left me with little information. He wasn't able to tell me where his family was, otherwise I wouldn't have such trouble. Brother Jian Chen, what type of connection does this Kendall have with you? Seeing the expression on Jian Chen's face, Yunli couldn't help but be curious. Jian Chen's expression grew dark for a moment. Uncle Kendall was the benefactor who saved my life and was also the first captain of the Flame Mercenaries. So it is like that. Yunli suddenly connected the dots. Immediately, he left the courtyard in order to start the investigation. In the afternoon, a member of the Flame Mercenaries came to Jian Chen's courtyard. Captain, the captain of the Blood Rain Mercenaries wishes to see you. From within, Jian Chen opened his eyes from his meditative position. What purpose does he have? It would appear he wishes to give thanks to you for saving his life. The mercenary responded. Tell him that a few days ago, everyone was in the same situation. Help should be a given, and so his thanks are unwarranted. Jian Chen replied evenly. Yes. The mercenary replied before quickly leaving. Not too long after that, another mercenary came by to Jian Chen's courtyard. Captain, the captain of the mercenaries of the war god is here to see you. Tell him that I am still recovering from my wounds and cannot properly receive him. Yes. Captain, the captain of the storm mercenaries is here to see you. I'm not here. Captain, the blue mercenaries vice captain is here to see you. I'm not here. After that, Jian Chen's days were not peaceful. Countless of mercenary captains as well as the leaders of many clans came to see him in an endless stream. Right now 4 days had passed since the magical beast wave had ended. Thus, many of the men who took part in the battle had researched just who the youth was that had rescued them as well as the one who killed the 3 Class 5 magical beasts. So more and more people came. After all, Jian Chen's fighting strength was on par with an Earth Saint Master, so many people had wished to establish some sort of friendship with him. Jian Chen had long since guessed their intent, so he locked the doors and refused to see anyone, otherwise he would have a huge mess on his hands. Chapter 251, A storm approaches. The stream of people continued on for 3 days before slowly weakening in number. By now, Jian Chen's name had once more made its rounds around Wake City. Now that he was residing within the Kai clan, they had quickly replaced the Tianxiong clan as the #1 clan in Wake City. After all, they had a person with the strength of an Earth Saint Master who had command over a few great Saint Masters. Without a doubt this person was the patron saint of the Kai clan, and within Wake City, he was an existence without parallel, no one that would dare offend him. At the same time, after Yunli had arranged some things, every single street and alleyway was filled with announcements regarding news about Kendall that rewarded information with a prize reward that left everyone speechless. If one had a clue that could be verified, then they would be awarded 10 purple coins, and if the right person was found, then a prize of 100 purple coins would be awarded. A single gold coin was already enough to feed a family of 3 for a month's worth of time. A purple coin was equal to 100 gold coins, and if a single verified hint could be offered for 10 purple coins, then many of the residents and mercenaries of Wake City would definitely be tempted. Immediately, the entire Wake City went into an uproar because of this prize reward. 10 purple coins was an extravagant sum to many of the ordinary families and weaker mercenaries. Within a luxurious restaurant of Wake City, a few middle-aged men sat together at a table. How arrogant is the one called Jian Chen, to refuse to see every one of us. All he did was pick up the opportunity to kill the Class 5 magical beasts by the Earth Saint Masters. Just how is that amazing? One of the men spoke indignantly. That's right. For a 20-year-old youth with good fortune, he is very arrogant. Another man spoke out with disdain in his voice. After hearing the two men talk, another purple-robed man spoke out softly, forget it. If a youth that young has a strength on a level like ours, then he has the right to be arrogant. His talent is unordinary, we should just report this to our clan. An individual like this would definitely be a prime person for our clan to rope in, and if he were to join our clan, then we would surely gain huge merits for it. Within a mansion in Wake City, a few well-dressed mercenaries gathered in one place in a meeting room. I've just heard that 2 of the Class 5 monster cores are in Jian Chen's possession. Dehei, hurry up and report this back to the Xia clan. A middle-aged man commanded. Captain, why don't we just purchase the monster core and then hand it over to the Xia clan? That way, we can afford any terrifying matters. A sturdy man asked. The captain in front of him shook his head, that won't do. A Class 5 monster core, let's not talk about if we have the funds to buy it, but Jian Chen might not even want to sell it. Furthermore, the strength he has shown has far surpassed ours, meaning he is far out of our control. The best method right now is to send word of such a profit to the Xia clan since only they would have enough strength to contest the Class 5 monster core. In a normal-looking restaurant, a simple sack-clothed man was quickly writing a letter, Xiao Shan. The moment he cried out, a youth around the age of 20 years quickly came and greeted the first man respectfully, "Second uncle, what have you called me here for?" The man handed over the letter to the youth and spoke seriously, "Xiao Shan, take this letter and the other apprentices back to the inner sect and deliver it to the sect leader." "Yes, second uncle." The youth took the letter and immediately left. After the youth had left the room, the man let out a breath of air. A Class 5 monster core is certainly too attractive of an object. What a shame that this youth named Jian Chen is too strong and only the sect leader can handle him. Otherwise, my chances of becoming an Earth Saint Master would go up drastically if I obtained that Class 5 monster core. In the blink of an eye, 3 days passed. Within the mansion, Jian Chen let out a sigh as he waved his hand in dejection. Seeing Jian Chen's expression, Commander Duo Li immediately grew aware of what that meant, "Take them all away." He commanded. "Yes." The soldiers standing by the side replied and immediately took out the men kneeling there. "Hey, hold on, our money, where's our reward? How could you do this? We've offered you information, and yet you kick us out without rewarding us." Their words fell on deaf ears as Commander Duo Li tried to reassure Jian Chen. "Brother Jian Chen, don't feel discouraged. The people you wish to find are undoubtedly in Wake City still. Stay determined. I'd hope so. Commander Duoli, I will be heading back first then. With that, Jian Chen immediately left the mansion. For the past few days, many people had entered the mansion with news of the whereabouts of Kendall's family, but everyone had tried to be deceitful and told a bunch of nonsense without a single trace of truth. For a few days, this pattern continued with Jian Chen's mood growing darker and darker. Could Kendall's family have all already left Wake City? Perhaps they moved to another city. Unfortunately, with the Tianyuan continent being so vast and only having a tiny amount of information, it was like trying to find a needle within a haystack. There was such a huge ocean of unnamed people, this would be difficult for Jian Chen. After returning to the Kai clan, Jian Chen immediately walked back to the tiny courtyard. Captain, the soldiers from the Lord's mansion have brought over the Class 5 Golden Fur Tiger King's corpse. Right now it's just right over there. What does the captain wish to do with it? Kai Er spoke out from the side. The moment he heard the Golden Fur Tiger King mentioned, Jian Chen stopped where he stood. Strip the corpse of the skin and clean it before setting it on the meat racks. Today our brothers will all be able to taste what the Class 5 Golden Fur Tiger King tastes like. Kai Er's face lit up with joy at Jian Chen's words. The meat of a Class 5 magical beast was a great boon to those of the great Saint Master level. Not only would it improve one's Saint force, it would also strengthen the body to a degree far beyond than that of before. Within the small region that was Wake City, while there were numerous amount of magical beast corpses, a Class 5 magical beast corpse was rare and very expensive. Thousands of gold coins wouldn't be enough to buy one in any market, and so very few men were able to enjoy the delicacy that was magical beast meat. Captain, do you truly wish to do this? Kai Er asked, unable to believe his ears. Jian Chen nodded his head and spoke fiercely, that's right. Hurry up and have some men prepare it, tonight we shall dine on the meat of the Golden Fur Tiger King. Yes, Captain. Kai Er was barely able to contain his joy. A Class 5 magical beast corpse could only be sought after with thousands of purple coins. He hadn't thought that Jian Chen would use something so expensive for everyone to enjoy. Delighted, Kai Er couldn't believe his luck in deciding to follow the right person while at the same time his respect for Jian Chen skyrocketed. On that night, the entire Kai clan's inhabitants celebrated with great joy. In the middle of the courtyard, the burning meat of the Golden Fur Tiger King could be seen as plenty of bandaged men all whisper among each other excitedly. Occasionally, they would burst out into laughter with great big smiles on their faces. Each one of them kept their eyes focused on the slowly spinning body of the Golden Fur Tiger King with drool just about to drop from their mouths. That night, Yun Li and Commander Duo Li had also been personally invited to join the Kai clan in enjoying the meat of the Golden Fur Tiger King. This night, the Kai clan would not be able to sleep a wink as they feasted on the meat and drank the blood as if it were wine. Under the candlelight, around 200 people were happily cheering and eating with pleasant smiles on their faces. During that night, most of the men there became drunk and it wasn't until 7 or 8 in the morning that they finally slunk back to their beds to sleep. After that night had passed, the Flame Mercenary members now had a new level of respect for Jian Chen. By early morning, several days had passed since the magical beast wave in Wake City. The entire city was essentially back to normal with people coming in and out of the city in an endless stream. From the looks of everyone's faces, each one of them didn't have any sort of worry. The only remnants of the magical beast wave was the bloody ground in the distance, along with the craters left by the magical crystal cannons. Suddenly, a group of brightly colored men came riding through the gates on horses. Among the group, there was a single carriage being led by 4 Class 3 magical beasts bred for the express purpose of running. As their group made it through the streets, a large banner could be seen drifting in the wind with the Xia symbol on it. When the Wake City guards saw the Xia symbol written on the banner, their faces all grew shocked before immediately commanding the soldiers to immediately move out of the way for them. Jia! Jia! The group of riders didn't slow down at all and instead rode on deeper within Wake City, leaving behind a trail of dust. On the road, many people watched them travel with a silent chatter between themselves. Who are these people that can be so overbearing? For them to ride into the city while urging their horses to go even faster. The soldiers didn't dare to stop them either. I saw that 4 Class 3 magical beasts were pulling their carriage. That isn't something any normal person could afford. I wonder just who those people are. Didn't you see the Xia symbol? That's the Xia clansman. From this, I bet that one of the major figures of the Xia clan has come to Wake City. Chapter 252, Xia Clan. As soon as the Xia clan's carriage disappeared from sight, the commanding soldier called out to another soldier, "Go and inform the Lord, the Xia clan has arrived in Wake City." Yes. The soldier immediately got on a horse after receiving the order and headed to the mansion. The Xia clan's group of people continued to travel within Wake City before finally arriving in front of the Kai clan's courtyard. 2 youths dismounted from their horses before walking up to the gates. One of them then called out to the guards, "Have your leader of the Kai clan come out straight away." This man spoke with arrogance and eyes that looked down on everyone. Despite the disgusting attitude of this man, the guards of the Kai clan didn't dare to offend the group. They knew in their hearts that this group had a considerable amount of influence after seeing the formation in front of them, and so one of the guards immediately replied, "Please wait one moment, I will go inform the leader." The youth didn't have any plans to wait, however, and immediately lifted his foot to step toward the gates. But before he could cross into the courtyard, the second guard blocked his path and spoke impassively, "Sire, we've already gone to notify the leader, please wait one moment." Upon hearing this, the youth's face instantly changed. He stared at the guard blocking him and roared angrily, "Who are you to stand in my way? Get the fuck away." The youth's outrage caused the guard's face to change. Looking at the carriage behind, the guard clearly didn't know who the Xia clan was or what area they were from, but from the banners on the carriage, the guard knew that this group of people was not someone he could afford to offend. "Honored one, our Kai clan has some rules in place. Without the approval of the elders, I cannot allow you in. Please don't make this any more difficult for this one." The youth snorted, "A little watchdog dares to block my path, you are seeking death." The youth immediately lifted his hand in disdain to slap the man across the face with a heavy palm strike. The guard had already long since prepared himself for this and blocked the slap with his arm. "How impudent! To go against the Xia clan, you must be tired of living." The second youth roared as he slammed his leg against the guard's stomach. The guard doubled up in pain as his face began to turn pale from the kick. The 2 youths didn't plan on stopping there. Once more, the 2 youths immediately lashed out to kick the guard in the head. Bang! The guard immediately flew through the gates and rolled over the ground with his head dripping with blood before falling unconscious. "Humph, a mere watchdog of a tiny clan dared to block our Xia clan? That is a crime even death cannot absolve." One of the youths looked at the bloody guard with contempt. "Humph, who dares cause such a disturbance to our Kai clan and even hit one of our guards?" An angry shout came from within the courtyard as Kai Er and a few other men walked forward. "Who are you?" One of the youths stared at Kai Er with disdain. "Humph, I am Kai Er, clan leader of the Kai clan." "Who are you too?" Kai Er sneered. "So you're the clan leader, we are from the Xia clan." The youth laughed. "The Xia clan." Immediately, Kai Er's face changed before asking, "Which Xia clan?" "Clan leader, are your eyes blind? Could there possibly be a second Xia clan anywhere within 1,000 miles from us?" The youth spoke arrogantly. As they spoke, the men who came along with Kai Er to the front suddenly saw the banners drifting in the wind and immediately grew serious at the sight. Kai Er cupped his hands together in a respectful greeting, "So you are from the Xia clan, how impolite of me." If the Xia clan were to come by the Kai clan a week ago, then Kai Er would have definitely been extremely respectful. At this moment, he was no longer afraid of them since the Kai clan of today was no longer the same Kai clan from before. Clan leader, hurry up and pay your respects to our young lord. The youth sneered. Hearing this, Kai Er looked toward the carriage and cupped his hands together. Kai Er of the Kai clan respectfully greets the young lord of the Xia clan. What purpose might the young lord have with our Kai clan? Seeing how Kai Er was so casual, the guards to the carriage looked at him with their eyes narrowed. Despite how impassive Kai Er was to their lord, they didn't say anything. Kai Er, I've heard there is a youth named Jian Chen in your Kai clan, is this true? A youth spoke out from within the carriage. That's right. Kai Er didn't deny it. Go and call out Jian Chen, I have some matters to speak to him with. The youth spoke. Hearing this, Kai Er's eyebrows furrowed together as he couldn't help but feel angry at this command. Right now, Jian Chen was his leader, and a powerful one at that. Although the Kai clan had a considerable amount of power, Kai Er didn't believe that Jian Chen's mysterious identity was weaker than the Kai clan. So when the youth within the carriage told him to call out Jian Chen, Kai Er couldn't help but feel dissatisfied by this. Kai Er's smile didn't quite reach his eyes as he spoke. Lord Xia, I will go report to Captain Jian Chen, but whether or not he decides to see you is not something I can guarantee. Shameful. How impudent. When Kai Er spoke, the men guarding the carriage couldn't help but cry out, the identity of our young lord is something that even the city lord of Wake City has to be respectful. This Jian Chen is a mere mercenary, something vastly different than our young lord. There is no need to report to him, have him come out here right away. An insignificant blade of grass dare make the young lord of the Xia clan wait? How audacious. Call out this Jian Chen immediately and don't waste our time. You risk incurring our wrath if this continues any longer. Another horseman cried out in anger. At these indignant cries, Kai Er's face began to grow dark. Go and have some men bring out Jian Chen. The young lord called from within. Yes, my lord. Immediately a few men dismounted from their horses and headed within the courtyard. Halt. This is the domain of the Kai clan. Without the clan leader's consent, no one can simply walk in. At this moment, a loud voice called from within the courtyard. Turning everyone could see Duo Kong, Charkas, and Qing Feng all walk toward the gates slowly. Chapter 253, The Might of a Battle Skill. One of the three great Saint Masters, Duo Kong, immediately laughed. Young lord of the Xia clan, please wait one moment, we've already notified Captain Jian Chen. I did not think that there would be men in this tiny city that would dare to force our Xia clan to wait. Uncle Lu, teach these men how different the heavens are to the earth. The youth within the chariot commanded. One of the men sitting on top of the Class 2 magical beast leaped off of his mount with his eyes flashing dangerously. In mid-air, he flew 10 meters to where Kai Er was and lashed out with a kick at his head. Kai Er sneered before condensing Saint Force within his hands before meeting each kick from the man with his Saint Force enhanced hands. Bang bang bang. Following a muffled sound, Kai Er and the middle-aged man exchanged a series of blows before the man finally landed on the ground. Kai Er's feet couldn't help but be forced back a bit as his hands started to redden. The middle-aged man on the other hand was still as composed as ever. They were both experts of the great Saint Master level. The difference was, this middle-aged man was already at the peak Great Saint Master realm, which was higher than Kai Er's level by a good amount. When the middle-aged man landed on the ground, he laughed, how insignificant you are. To dare place our Xia clan on the same level as your Kai clan. Today will be the day I teach you a lesson. Immediately, a blue-colored Saint Force began to form in his right hand before forming a long and slender blue whip. To the observant ones, they would be able to see water like ripples gleam across the whip's surface. Water attribute Saint Force. Seeing the long whip within the man's hands, all four of the great Saint Masters were shocked. Saint Force with an attribute was extremely rare in Wake City, but this man unexpectedly had a water Saint Force. The man brandished the whip and allowed it to snap back in the air for a crisp, "pa" sound before flying straight toward Kai. The moment when the whip flew at Kai, the blue light from the whip immediately spread out and confused everyone who was watching as it masked the trajectory of the whip's path. Against a peak great Saint Master, Kai didn't dare to underestimate him, and so he immediately brought out his own saint weapon to clash against the whip. The whip was unnaturally soft, and so the moment the two weapons hit, the whip coiled around the sword like a viper before going taut. Immediately feeling the change in control of his saint weapon, Kai immediately gave a big shout as a surge of saint force rippled out from his sword and slashed down onto the whip wielder. The middle-aged man sneered as he pulled on his whip. The whip immediately went from a soft form into one of rigid steel that restricted Kai's sword in midair. Tugging on his sword, Kai was unfortunately unable to force his sword to move thanks to the immovable whip around his sword. With his saint weapon unable to be swung or moved, Kai was forced into a position where he couldn't do anything. Humph! How savage the Xia clan are! Duo Kong sneered from the side before immediately swinging down onto the whip with his saint weapon. The middle-aged man sneered in disdain before retrieving his whip with a simple hand gesture. In an instant, the whip flew away from where Duo Kong had swung down on. This time, the man didn't take advantage of Duo Kang's sword to swing his whip around it. Instead, the whip became an extremely strong weapon of steel and smashed against the lateral side of Duo Kang's sword. Clang! Following the sounds of metal hitting metal, Duo Kang's sword was immediately knocked away. Even a sudden attack on him had been quickly nullified by the whip. Duo Kang's expression grew dark before looking to Charkis and Qingfeng. "He's quite strong, come help." With the man from the Xia clan having a water attribute saint force as well as being a peak great saint master, his strength was not something Duo Kang could face on his own. Qingfeng and Charkis didn't hesitate and immediately brought out their own saint weapons to charge at the man. Charkis' saint weapon was a sword that was extremely large. With each swing, a large ear-piercing sound could be heard. Qingfeng's weapon was a 3-meter-long spear that left a streak of white light as it moved through the air. Its movements were like a coiling dragon as well as a viper, unpredictable. Its path would change with each strike. The middle-aged man's strength was extremely strong, and so even against 3 great saint masters, he wasn't at a disadvantage at all. With the whip being so flexible and him being an expert, his whip skill was at the pinnacle of mastery. The whip was capable of being soft and flexible yet at the same time becoming as strong as rigid metal that couldn't be defended against. The whip and the saint weapons of the 3 great saint masters continued to clash in an endless stream of blows as the sounds of battle rang through the courtyard. Within the Kai clan, more and more members of the flame mercenaries slowly came to the front to hear what the sound was. The moment they saw that Duo Kong and the other great saint masters were fighting, each one of them pulled out their own saint weapons and prepared to fight as well. At this moment, 2 shadowy figures shot past the flame mercenaries to where the other great saint masters were. The 2 of them didn't waste any time and immediately joined with Duo Kong and the others to fight against the middle-aged man from the Xia clan. After all, seeing them fight meant there was no need for any words to be said. "Ha, I didn't think the Kai clan would be hiding so many experts. 5 great saint masters, this is truly a strong force within Wake City." The young lord of the Xia clan spoke slowly. "My lord, you might know this, but each one of the 5 great saint masters in front of us once led their own strong mercenary group. Once Jian Chen appeared, each one of them dissolved their mercenary groups and became one with the flame mercenaries. Furthermore, the leader of this flame mercenaries is Jian Chen. I've also heard that the Kai clan and the Dor clan have also joined with the flame mercenaries," a youth spoke out respectfully to the one inside the carriage. "Oh, is that right? Ha, it seems the one named Jian Chen is quite a complex person. I've heard he is only 20 years old, a youth with this much strength is surely someone I can praise." The young lord within the chariot laughed. Within the Kai courtyard, the middle-aged man from the Xia clan was feeling pressure now that he was fighting against 5 great saint masters. His face was extremely serious now. He was no longer the calm and composed person he was before. Despite being a water-attributed peak Great Saint Master with top-notch strength, fighting against 5 Great Saint Masters was still very difficult. With 3 middle Great Saint Masters and 2 barely peak Great Saint Masters, this was enough to give him an extremely challenging time. Kai Er stood off to the side and watched the battle continue. Because of how these 5 Great Saint Masters all had experience fighting with each other, they were able to fight seamlessly in coordination. If he were to join in the fight however, he would break apart the understanding of the group and how they fought. The 6 people continued to fight for some time, pushing the middle-aged man into a disadvantageous situation. Then at that moment, the middle-aged man's eyes flashed dangerously as he roared, "Let me show you how dangerous my battle skill then, water stream." A strong amount of his water saint force immediately flowed around him as his whip began to move about crazily. Around him, numerous blue-colored whips formed and filled the sky before flying toward the 5 Great Saint Masters. Duo Kong and the other 4 all shouted angrily as their inner saint force pulsed out of them to form on the outside of their bodies. Immediately, the stream of water crashed into the 5's defenses. While their saint force pulsed violently upon contact, the good thing was that despite the strength of the battle skill, the defenses of the Great Saint Master were enough to defend against it. Mountain-carrying torrent. The man shouted once more as the whip in his hand rippled once more before striking at Duo Kong and the others in the pattern of a viper. The 5 weren't afraid at all and struck at the whip simultaneously. While the whip looked small at first, it then suddenly transformed into the size of a huge mountain. The moment the 5 Great Saint Masters' saint weapons clashed against it, a loud vibration was sent back through their arms and numbed them so much that they felt as if their bones were about to shatter. Their saint weapons couldn't help but fall to the ground as they all fell back a few steps. The whip didn't falter in the least and struck them all in the chest firmly. Pa! Following the large sound, Duo Kong and the other 4's shirts were all instantly destroyed. Blood flew through the air as their heavy bodies flew along with it before falling to the ground 5 meters away. With difficulty then, each person tried to crawl back up from the ground. Originally, victory had been in sight for the 5 Great Saint Masters, but with this battle skill, the situation had changed. From this it could be seen that the power of a battle skill was truly terrifying. The middle-aged man sneered at the floored men. To be able to force me to use my battle skill, you should all be proud of this achievement until you die. Today I will break apart your legs to vent my anger. The middle-aged man lifted his whip and was about to lash out when another voice called out to him immediately. Halt! The voice was filled with such anger that it was almost a roar. Hearing the middle-aged man couldn't help but stop his hand before turning to look only to see a youth around the age of 20 wearing a cheap white robe. His hair only reached his shoulders and despite the clothes looking so simple, the youth himself was rather handsome. His skin was as white as a sheep's wool, making it hard to believe that this skin color, that'd make any woman jealous, actually belonged to a man. His delicate facial features matched each other flawlessly. It was to the point where people suspected that his face was the killer of all the girls in the world. Jian Chen had cultivated the Azulate sword law since his birth and so practically every cell within his body was strengthened. Not once had he ever tried to alter his body and had allowed nature to run its course instead. Therefore, no matter whether it was his body or his appearances, the Azulate sword law was the cause. From the beginning it had developed him perfectly so that even his appearance would become handsome-looking. As he grew older, he had also continued to train his body and strengthened it, causing his appearances to follow suit. Who are you? The middle-aged man from the Xia clan sternly asked as he glared sharply at Jian Chen. Jian Chen's expression was overcast as he said, I'm the one you're looking for, Jian Chen. He didn't conceal the intense killing intent reflected in his eyes. Chapter 254, Provoking the Xia clan. Hearing this, the middle-aged man looked at Jian Chen to size him up. So you're Jian Chen. It would appear the rumors are true, you don't look like you're over the age of 25. Jian Chen looked at the 5 injured great saint masters on the ground before turning back to the middle-aged man with a dark expression. Xia clansman, what matter did you really have with me? Jian Chen's attitude had made the middle-aged man's eyebrows furrow together before snorting. Jian Chen, the young lord of our Xia clan wanted to see you. Hurry up and greet the young lord. At this moment, the carriage doors flipped open as an expensively dressed youth slowly walked down from within. The youth was thin in physique and was around 28 years old. His appearance was rather grand and he himself was quite handsome. In his hand, an expensive-looking fan could be seen as he elegantly fanned himself. My lord! My lord! This youth was clearly a high-holding position within the Xia clan. The very moment he revealed his face, every single guard there immediately paid their respects. Without looking any other way, the youth walked into the courtyard with a few strong-looking men following him from behind. Their eyes glared fiercely as they scanned the place in order to safely protect the young charge in front of them from any danger. The youth's eyes fell onto Jian Chen as the intensity in his eyes flared up at the sight of Jian Chen's handsome face. Smiling, he spoke, "So you are Jian Chen. You are unexpectedly quite handsome-looking." Jian Chen looked at the young lord of the Xia clan for a moment before looking at the men around him. He could tell their strengths automatically: 3 great saint masters, 5 peak saint masters, and the water saint force peak great saint master that could fight the 5 great saint masters. This was surely a very strong force of power that could not be easily matched in Wake City. Jian Chen sneered, "Lord Xia, explain your purpose for coming." Laughing, the young lord said, "So you are a man who gets to the point. Good, I won't beat around the bush and get straight to the problem then." With this, the young lord stopped speaking for a moment before resuming with a serious expression, "Jian Chen, I know you have 2 Class 5 monster cores. I have come here today to buy those 2 monster cores from you. Apologies, but I am not selling the monster cores." Jian Chen spoke with no hesitation at all. The young lord had already anticipated this outcome, however, and continued, "Jian Chen, those Class 5 monster cores will only bring you trouble if you continue to keep them. You are risking your life, and even as a mercenary captain, those great saint masters under you are not enough to guard the monster cores. Even an Earth Saint Master would be attracted to take a Class 5 monster core. You wouldn't have the ability to stop them if they tried. So it would be in your best interest to sell them to me. This way, not only will you make a nice sum of money, but you will also be one problem shorter." "My apologies, but I've said already that I am not selling the monster cores." Jian Chen's voice grew colder with this repetition. The young lord's eyes frosted over for a moment before smiling, "Jian Chen, I will give you 3 days to think it over. On the 3rd day, I will come back. Of course, don't even think about running away in that time. If you do, then we will take this as a provocation of our goodwill. And after that, you will be aware of the consequences." With that, the Xia clan's young lord turned around to leave. Seeing the young lord about to leave, Jian Chen's eyes flashed coldly before shouting, "Halt!" The young lord turned around with a smile as he stared at Jian Chen. "What's wrong? Have you changed your mind?" Jian Chen looked at the 5 injured men at his side before pointing at the middle-aged man. "The rest of you can go, but you will stay behind." Hearing this, the young lord's expression changed, as did the middle-aged man, who looked at him in shock. "Jian Chen, just what is the meaning of this?" The young lord had already sensed the ill intent of Jian Chen, whose face continued to grow darker. Within Wake City, there had never been someone who dared to provoke the Xia clan's authority. Jian Chen's face revealed a cold smile. "You truly do treat this area as if it was your backyard. You come whenever you want, and you leave whenever you wish. After injuring my men, don't even think about leaving today." "Pa!" The folding fan in the lord's hand snapped shut as he lost his previously calm demeanor. "Impudence! You should remember just who you are speaking to, Jian Chen." The young lord's words fell on deaf ears as Jian Chen continued to stare dangerously at the man who had injured his 5 great saint masters. The middle-aged man looked at him in amusement as he couldn't help but break out into a smile. Despite hearing that Jian Chen's strength was quite strong, Jian Chen was still very young, therefore he couldn't be that strong. Also, the middle-aged man had full confidence in his strength, so he hadn't placed Jian Chen within his eye at all. Jian Chen, could it be that you wish to punish me? But, how do you plan on doing that? The man smiled with disdain. Death. Immediately, a strong amount of killing intent flooded Jian Chen's face. When it came to those who wronged him first, Jian Chen had no mercy. If he hadn't shown up at the time he did, then the 5 great saint masters would had suffered from even more serious wounds. Even then, in front of all the flame mercenaries, he had to be unyielding to everyone else. If he were not, then it would affect his leadership. That was because while his flame mercenaries were not considered weak, there were still people who were hell-bent on overtaking him. Jian Chen, you are courting death. Both the middle-aged man and the young lord cried out in anger. Their faces grew ugly to look at as they looked at Jian Chen with a killing intent. Jian Chen's words made it seem as if the Xia clan were of no importance to him. Something like this was unbearable to endure by the young lord. At that moment, every single member of the flame mercenaries looked at Jian Chen. Many of them had secretly approving of this manner and had been moved by his words as well. Many of the mercenaries had been under Duo Kang's group previously, so while on the surface there had been some ups and downs between the group and Duo Kang, they were still best friends until the ends of their time. They were brothers between brothers, otherwise, they would not have followed him into the flame mercenaries. With Duo Kang injured, they couldn't help but feel indignation within their hearts, but with the enemy being so strong, they weren't able to do anything. Thus all of their hopes to fight back had been placed on Jian Chen's shoulders. The middle-aged man laughed angrily before placing his hands across his chest. Good. Very good, Jian Chen. You truly do have a courageous spirit that should be praised. But your words are something that are quite difficult to say. Careful you don't bring disgrace upon yourself now. So if you wish to kill me, then make your move, let me see just how true those rumors truly are. Uncle Lu, it would appear that we no longer need to buy those class 5 monster cores from Jian Chen. That is true, young lord. This means we can save a good amount of money now. The one named Uncle Lu began to laugh. The blue-colored whip appeared in his right hand once more before snapping in midair with a single snap of his wrist, letting out a fierce cracking sound. Jian Chen's lips curled into a cold smile. Despite going up against a water saint force expert, he still didn't see such a person as his opponent. With a swaying motion, Jian Chen's figure immediately disappeared and left behind a faint phantom image of himself. Quickly he flew toward the middle-aged man while simultaneously bringing out his light wind sword to stab at the middle-aged man's throat. The light wind sword became a streak of silver light that flew at the middle-aged man so fast that by the time the man could react, it had already reached within a foot of his throat. For the sake of his brothers within the flame mercenaries, this victory had to be a clear-cut one, so Jian Chen didn't hesitate to use more power than before. How quick he is! The middle-aged man grew startled as his mocking expression quickly became a serious one. Quickly, he had realized that Jian Chen wouldn't be as easy to deal with as he thought. The middle-aged man burst backward and brandished his whip so that it flew at Jian Chen like a viper. In mid-air, it began to coil around the light wind sword as it flew to stab at him. He had underestimated the light wind sword's speed. Just as the whip was about to coil around the sword, the light wind sword's speed instantly increased several times over and instantly flew faster. Against such a fast sword, the middle-aged man wasn't able to dodge or defend himself in time. So in the end, the light wind sword had pierced into the man's throat with a terrifying amount of speed. Despite the man having water saint force which granted him a superiority in some areas, but to Jian Chen, this advantage was no advantage at all. Even though the man had a battle skill, there was no time to use it. The middle-aged man stared rigidly at Jian Chen in utter disbelief. Even with his entire strength, he had been completely unable to dodge the sword. Uncle Lu, the young lord's face slackened as he looked on in disbelief. He had a good understanding of his uncle's strength, and within the clan, Uncle Lu was ranked third. Aside from an Earth Saint Master, there was not a single person that could fight and win against his Uncle Lu. Even with that, Jian Chen had been able to kill him in a single stroke. This type of result was simply not one he could take. Protect the young lord. With the middle-aged man killed, every single guard of the Xia clan immediately grew vigilant. They quickly grabbed the young lord and retreated from the Kai clan with a hard look at Jian Chen and took precautions in case Jian Chen wanted to strike to kill again. I've said it before, this area is not the courtyard of the Xia clan. In here, you simply cannot come as you want and leave as you wish. Men, surround them. Jian Chen commanded. Yes, Captain. The brothers of the Flame Mercenaries immediately obeyed the command, instantly barricading the gate to prevent the Xia clan from leaving. Jian Chen, what are you doing? The young lord of the Xia clan went white as he roared in false bravado. Jian Chen's reveal of strength had made the young lord feel an intense amount of fear in his heart. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.